Hey, everybody. We're back. A lot to talk about. Serious situation in the world, but we have to respond. So, a lot to update you on. So, here we go.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
All right, everybody. I'm so glad to be here with all of you tonight. And, a lot has happened in the world, as I'm sure everyone here is aware. I mean, I haven't been streaming. I haven't streamed since last Friday. And a lot has gone on. And I'm going to, I got a lot to go over in the opening remarks just to kind of let you know where we're all at, give you, where we're at, etc. So we're going to follow our usual format. First, my opening remarks, then the roll call. And then after that, I'll answer your questions. You can send Rumble rants. You can Cash App me at CalebMoppin22. The best way to send questions is via Buy Me a Coffee. And I must say, multiple questions came in over the weekend, and there were two very, very, very good questions that were sent in over the weekend. So they're going to be first, but I've got plenty of time tonight. So if you want to have me answer a question in the second half of the show, please go to buymeacoffee.com/CalebMoppin and send your question. As far as announcements, we just had a great National Day of Action at the Center for Political Innovation for No War Against Iran. Join the Center for Political Innovation. We need more members. Become a member today. Alex Giovanni, he says, thank you for all your work, Caleb and CPI comrades. Thank you all for being here. God bless you all. Well, our work has just begun, as I'm sure you can imagine. But yeah, that's the announcement. So as I was saying, you can send questions in the second half of the show, three different ways. The best way is to go to buymeacoffee.com/CalebMoppin. First, my opening remarks, then the roll call, then I answer questions. Folks, we are in an Armageddon situation. It looked like the United States was going to attack Iran. I didn't think it would be this bad. I did not think that it would be an all-out I last summer, Donald Trump did a tiny little attack on an Iranian nuclear facility. I thought it might be something like this. No, we had our National Day of Action on Saturday. And when I got up, I saw that they had just unloaded on Iran. They were reporting that the supreme leader of Iran was killed. And at first it looked like maybe he wasn't actually dead. And then it became clear that he was dead. And, this is an unbelievable, shocking situation. And this very well could lead to World War III. I don't want to get apocalyptic here, but, Iran is a sovereign country. Iran has high-powered long-range missiles, and Iran is already striking back. They tell us, the Pentagon will only acknowledge so far that 6 soldiers are dead. Every objective observer is saying there's no way that there's just 6 dead soldiers. Iran has been striking all the U.S. military bases in the region. They have struck Israel. Israel is admitting casualties. A number of Israelis are dead. A number of civilians in the countries that host U.S. military bases, Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, they are reporting deaths. And there is definitely more than 6 U.S. soldiers that are dead. This situation is completely insane. Iran can't not respond. They have to. How can a country, you kill their head of state, who's not even their secular head of state? He's not even their president. He's their religious leader. You kill the equivalent of the Pope to Shia Muslims in the world. They're going to retaliate, and they're going to respond. And there is absolutely no justification for this. They say that the Supreme Leader Khamenei is responsible for the death of U.S. troops in Iraq. Well, first of all, the invasion of Iraq was illegal and not legitimate. The UN said it wasn't legal. NATO didn't even go along with it. But on top of that, most of the roadside bombs that were planted that killed U.S. troops were planted by Sunnis, by Wahhabi groups. And actually the Shia groups in Iraq that were aligned with Iran and received support from Iran tended to be willing to cooperate with the U.S. occupiers to bring stability and to stop ethnic violence. The idea that Khamenei is responsible for the death of U.S. troops in Iraq and that somehow makes this okay, that's absurd. The idea that Iran is trying to get a nuclear bomb, this whole situation has drastically reduced world peace. First of all, no country is ever going to negotiate with the United States again, right? Iraq didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They just kicked out an inspection team. They claimed they had weapons of mass destruction. When they didn't, they invaded them. Libya gave up its nuclear weapons program, its chemical weapons, and in exchange, the USA invaded them and overthrew them. And North Korea, they actually got an atomic bomb and they're safe. And this is absolutely crazy. Every country in the world that is opposed to the United States is thinking we better get an atomic bomb now, because if we don't have one, there's no way to negotiate with the United States and get honest treatment. And, this is, setting back the Russia negotiations. How is Russia supposed to make a deal with the United States regarding Ukraine when Iran was negotiating with the United States? And in the middle of the negotiations, the USA launched a surprise attack and murdered their head of state. No country can negotiate with the United States. This is the credibility of the United States at the negotiating table has just been completely shot by this utterly cowardly move. The other thing that I must say is the USA claims to be a democracy. The USA claims to be a democracy, but 80% of the American people, 75, 85 in some polls, that the overwhelming majority of the American people are against this war. But yet, it's still happening. And on top of that, the U.S. Senate refused to stop Trump. They just had a U.S. Senate vote, and the U.S. Senate's not going to stop Trump. The American people are overwhelmingly opposed to this action, to this attack, to launching World War III, it looks like, but yet it's still happening. When you have 81% of the public that says don't attack Iran, and the president just says, I'm going to do it anyway, and the Congress, could potentially take action to stop them, and they say, nah, we're not going to. This shows that the USA is not a democracy in any conceivable way. And so on what basis does the USA then have the right to say we're spreading democracy around the world if we don't even have democracy here, it looks like? And there's a lot to update people on, but I must say, first of all, I am very, very happy to see how much opposition there is. The American people have pulled their head out of their ass, right? For the longest time. I remember when the USA invaded Iraq after 9/11. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. The 9/11 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. They were Wahhabis. Saddam Hussein was a Ba'athist Arab socialist who ran a secular government. And the USA invaded Iraq, and it was about 50-50. And a whole bunch of people supported it because, all Muslims are the same and kill them terrorists. And, this time, and it took a long time for public opinion to turn against the war in Iraq. When the USA was in the Vietnam War, the U.S. public was overwhelmingly for it, 75, 80%. And it took year after year and dead body after dead body until the American people turned against it. The Korean War, the U.S. public was overwhelmingly in favor of the Korean War. But here we have a situation where the war is launched as a surprise. The American people don't even know what's happening. They kind of get some hints that something might be happening a few days beforehand. It happens. The American people are like, what the hell did you just do? And they're against it. Amazing. This is amazing. The American people are waking up. We got to get out of this mindset that we're the persecuted good Germans and America is the evil empire. Got to stop thinking like that, right? Stop thinking like the Weathermen, the 1960s Weather Underground. We're the good white people in this evil nation of oppressors. No, don't think that way. The American people agree with us. They see their living standard going down. They see our civil liberties being stripped away. They see our government spending billions and billions of dollars on wars around the world as we get poorer. And they say the government works for a group of rich people and not us. The American people get it. They just don't have the ideology. They don't understand why the situation is. But we don't have to convince the American people that these wars are wrong. They know that. We don't have to convince the American people this isn't a real democracy. They know that, right? Noam Chomsky wrote a book called Manufacturing Consent. Well, you can throw that book in the garbage, not just because of the Epstein thing, but because now they don't even bother to manufacture the consent anymore. There is no consent. We're still being ruled over. You know, there's that old story of the emperor has no clothes, right? And the emperor has no clothes, right? The story is that the emperor, you know, is given what he thinks is a fancy gown that's like invisible, and he's walking around naked, and everyone is afraid to tell the emperor that he's naked. And, you know, and one little boy is brave enough to tell the emperor that he's naked. Well, now it's not that situation at all. Now the emperor is a flasher. The emperor is a perverted exhibitionist, and he's walking around completely naked, and no one's pretending that he has clothes on, and everyone's like, you're naked, dude, put that away, we don't want to see it. And he's like, I'm the emperor. If I want to wave myself in front of you, if I want to expose myself in a public place, I can do it. What are you going to do about it? This is a completely different situation. It's not the emperor has no clothes anymore. It's the emperor is a perverted flasher, is a perverted exhibitionist walking around, displaying himself to everybody. And we're all told, well, nothing we can do about it. We just have to take it. Well, we don't have to take it, but we have to form a movement. The only way out of this is to build a movement. And and that's not a quick fix. You don't build a movement. That's not, you know, that's not sharing something on Facebook. That's not an election. You have to build a movement, and we have to build a movement to give voice to these popular sentiments. And that's why I must say, I am amazed by the Center for Political Innovation. I'm amazed by it. We had a National Day of Action already scheduled on Saturday, February 28th, the day that this happened. And we had an amazing showing. I can't show the whole video around the country. I'm just going to show you the beginning where it shows you all the cities where we had people. We had people in the streets of 8 different cities. Take a look. This is us. We were very, very, very visible all over the country.
Within the White House. I don't know if you guys saw, Trump gets on TV this morning. He goes, oh, American patriots are going to die. Oh, and that's okay. That's okay because the children of the Epstein class won't be the people going out to fight and die so that we can get regime change in Iran. It won't be the bankers on Wall Street who go out and fight and die. It won't be the politicians in the White House or in Congress. It won't be any of the elites who are holding our country hostage in a war that does not benefit the American people. The American people do not want a war. 80% of the American people are opposed to this war. American soldiers do not want to fight the Iranian people.
We have no democracy anymore. We have no constitution, and we need to take back our republic. Otherwise, there will be increasing wars, unstopped wars.
It's absolutely disgraceful. Not one American serviceman should die for Israel's war in the Middle East. Not one American serviceman should come home in a body bag, and our servicemen do not want to fight. On the aircraft carriers that they have parked outside of Iran, you have thousands of American servicemen intentionally clogging the toilets and trying to flood the aircraft carrier because they know that the Iranian people are not their enemy. They know that Wall Street is their enemy. The most anti-war people in this country are our servicemen. And why? Because they're actually the people that are going over there to fight.
Enough war! You were lied to about Iraq. You were lied to about Afghanistan. You were lied to about every war that has ever been fought in this country. Enough wars for nothing. Bring our troops home. Protect the United States. Clean up this country. Put them to work.
Hey, CPI is out here on the streets of Portland, Oregon to say no war with Iran.
We need peace now. Iran did not attack us. Iran actually doesn't want nuclear weapons, but they have a right to develop nuclear power as any country has.
We should not start a war in Iran. Let Trump figure that out. This isn't our war. Our war is in the USA, where we got to worry about our own people. He is putting Americans last. He's Israel first. Trump is for Israel, you guys.
Oh, hey, Penny, what's going on?
What's going on? We got war with Iran. Hennepin County Medical Center, the biggest hospital in Minneapolis, is going to close this summer. Why? Because we got money for war, and we got money for ICE, for killing American citizens. Her name is Paul Good, Alex Preddy. We got money for war. Iran is not our enemy. Epstein and the Israel lobby are the enemy. No war for bail. Iran is not our enemy.
All right. I'll start off by saying that I do not speak for everyone here. These opinions are my own. But I want to say I do think it is wrong that the military murdered Ayatollah Khamenei. He was a strong leader who protected religious freedom in Iran. He protected Christians, protected Muslims, protected Jews. He had provided good healthcare and education for people. And so I think it's wrong to go kill leaders, especially good ones.
Well, I'm at a major intersection in St. Louis trying to let people know that Iran is not our enemy. I've received a lot of positive feedback from people, but we all need to get out of our comfort zones and get into the streets and protest this insidious war.
Why are you here protesting today?
Oh, hi. Thanks for asking. I'm here because of what's happening with the U.S. agreeing to bomb Iran with Israel. This is not what the people want. 80% of the American people are pissed off about this.
The world is watching us because we are in the belly of the beast, but we are the heart of free speech. And that is why I'm able to get up here and say, free the world from tyranny.
Affordability. That's one of the huge issues in America right now. People can't pay rent, can't buy a house, can't afford their car, can't afford car insurance, food, you name it. And fighting Iran isn't going to help that. In fact, it's going to hurt it because...
Yeah, all over the country. And that video goes on for a whole half hour. And our members were out there. Briggy was there on the bullhorn. That was Briggy doing great. And that was, Irving and Noah and Robert and Tim and Penny and Gabby and Dan and Mike, and our members were just everywhere, right? Kinky was out in Joshua Tree. I mean, we have a group that can go out and raise awareness, and we did it our way. We brought American flags. We said America first, not Israel first. Iran is not our enemy. We did it our way. There were, the Answer Coalition had people in a protest cage screaming about racist white males and transgender or something like that. And, screw them. Who cares? We didn't waste our time with that. We went to the people. We were there to raise awareness and agitate against this war. And I think we did a tremendous job. And I am just blown away by the Center for Political Innovation. We have the best people. We really do. Membership is rising. We had 3 people join last week. 3 new members in different states. People are joining all the time, and our ranks are growing, and we're doing all kinds of stuff. I just got to tell you, some amazing things are happening, and we are building a movement. So that brings me to another thing that happened today, and I guess I'll just mention this, right? This morning, it wasn't morning their time. It was midday their time, but it was early morning. This morning, I went on Iranian state television. I went on Press TV. Now, I've been on Press TV before, but that was not at a time that the USA was bombing Iran, and that was not at a time that Iran was retaliating against U.S. troops. And honestly, I wondered if it was safe for me to do that, if this would be considered treason or something like that. But I did consult with lawyers, and I was not paid for my appearance. And I did not, advocate anything. I gave my opinion just like I would do to any other TV network. And I appeared on Iranian television. And Press TV, the English language TV network, is watched by millions of Iranians. Their viewership in a normal day is about 2 million people, right? Iranian English is not the main language, but because of American movies and stuff like that, Press TV, and because Press TV has a wider range of perspective than a lot of regular Iranian TV does, right? Because you have so many international guests, because it's in English, you know, it has a very big viewership, and they're in the middle of a war, and so I decided, you know what? I'm going to go on Press TV. And if they want to come arrest me for this, it's not a crime. It is my freedom of speech. We have not declared war on Iran. And I was on there representing the anti-war majority, the American people who don't agree with this war. So I'll just show you a couple minutes here. This morning, I took the bold move of going on Iranian state television and showing the Iranian people the real America that is against this war.
Caleb Maupin is the director of Center for Political Innovation and author of Who Are the Houthis and What Are They Fighting For? He joins us, of course, from New York in the United States. Caleb, thank you, and good to see you again. You heard the British public's view earlier, and I hope you did. What's it like in the United States? What are the people in the U.S. saying about this U.S.-led, Israeli-led war on Iran?
Well, this is an unprecedented situation in American politics. You know, we look back on the U.S. invasion of Iraq, where there was about 50% support for it at the time the war was launched.
Anyway, yeah, I went on Iranian TV, and you can watch it, you know, and you can watch. I said a lot of important things. At one point, the host was very moved because I talked about the construction jihad that Khomeini launched during the Iraq-Iran war, where they paved the roads and electrified the rural villages of Iran. And the host was very moved and said that he was from a rural village in Iran, and he appreciated my remarks. And this is very important because we have to show people that the American people don't agree. Trump does not represent America. Trump represents some criminals in Tel Aviv and some criminals on Wall Street and in London, and he doesn't represent the American people. And so I did a great service for America by representing the real America, the people of America, the working families of America who don't want this war. And, you know, was it a risky thing to do? Perhaps, but it was necessary. And I feel that I did the right thing by going on Iranian television and calling out this war and representing the anti-war majority. So that happened. And I mean, we're just moving ahead. I do want to go over, I mean, a couple things. First of all, one of the people who didn't agree with our protest insisted that they weren't killing any civilians in Iran. They were only killing ayatollahs, she said. They were only killing ayatollahs. They weren't killing civilians. Well, the bombing began by bombing an all-girls elementary school and killing 136 people, mainly children. That's how this began. And right now, they're just bombing Tehran, and they're just killing people. And Pete Hegseth admitted, he said, they're just raining death and destruction from the sky. They're not even pretending that there's anything humanitarian about it, and they don't have a goal, right? First, the goal was that they wanted to prevent Iran from having peaceful nuclear energy. Then it became regime change, overthrow the government. Then it became long-range missiles. There's no goal for this. This attack, when you have a war, generally it's you want X, and so you're launching military action to get X. Nobody knows what they want. They don't even know what they want. They just want to kill Iranians. They just want to murder people. That's all they want. There's no goal. Has there ever been a war in history where they launch it and they just like, we're fighting this country because they're this country? And Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz. The oil prices are going to go through the roof. I mean, this is a war with no goal, no justification. This is a war that came completely out of the blue. Iran has said they don't want a nuclear weapon for 47 years. This war is completely illegal. It's absolutely crazy. And the American people are overwhelmingly against it. And I got to say, it is from the MAGA camp that the loudest and most sincere opposition is coming. Some Democrats discovered they were against this war before it happened. When Trump was giving his State of the Union, they were all sitting down when he was saying perfectly sensible things like the government should give priority to people that are citizens, not illegal immigrants, things like that. And they were sitting down. And then when Trump lied about Iran and was saying war with Iran, Elizabeth Warren and AOC and all of them were just applauding, yay, war with Iran, you know, and they could have voted. They could have had a vote on Friday to prevent this war, right? Thomas Massie wanted to have a vote on Friday to take authorization away from Trump, to tell Trump he wasn't allowed to do this. And they pushed it back until Monday because they wanted to make sure that this war happened, because they all knew it was coming. So the Democrats are totally complicit. However, Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, they are kicking ass. They are the real opposition right now. The left is totally compromised. But you know, they're voicing opposition, and that's good. Anyone who speaks against it is good. So even if they're not sincere, even if whatever, I appreciate it. That said, it is the Thomas Massies, the Tucker Carlsons, the Candace Owens, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes. They're the sincere ones here. They're the ones that are really opposing this. Here's Thomas Massie.
And for what? This administration can't even give us a straight answer as to why we launched this preemptive war. The president says we had to strike first because an Iranian strike was imminent. Meanwhile, the Department of Defense conceded there was no evidence of an imminent Iranian strike. Some told us this war was about nuclear weapons, but 6 months ago, we were assured our last strike on Iran decimated their nuclear program. So which is it? I think the most candid answer came from the Secretary of State, who told the press that Israel forced our hand and dragged us into this war again. And that truth is the very reason why it is Congress that must decide war. If American lives are to be risked and American blood is to be shed, that decision must be debated and voted on by the representatives of the American people. And that debate is meant to be arduous. And that vote is meant to be hard. I have a theory. I think my colleagues don't want to go on record because we have a terrible track record of meddling in the Middle East. They don't want their name associated with this when it doesn't turn out well. But Congress cannot be bothered with its constitutional duty because for many in this chamber, it's easier to simply allow someone else's sons and daughters to be sent to combat without their vote. And to be clear, we aren't even here to declare war today. All we're voting on is a war powers resolution to reassert the Constitution, that Congress must decide questions of war. And if Congress wants war, then the Speaker should hold a vote to declare it.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. Now, today, at a congressional hearing, a U.S. Marine who is opposed to this war disrupted a proceeding. The police removed him. A member of Congress decided to go join the cops in the Capitol Police in roughing him up, and they broke his arm, right? It looked like it was his hand at first, but it was actually his arm. I've got two different angles. This happened in the halls of Congress today. This is a U.S. Marine in uniform, disrupted congressional proceedings opposing this war, and this happened. And for some reason, a member of Congress, I mean, security procedures, you generally don't have elected officials go and manhandle the protesters. That's just like basic, right? But this is what happened.
Ow! No one wants to fight for Israel!
His hand! Oh! His hand!
Sir. Let go of your hand. Let go of the door. Let go of the door. The senator broke his hand. A sitting U.S. senator just broke the hand of a Marine. Sir. Okay. Control your Senate. Arm stuck in the door. Okay, sir. A U.S. senator just broke the hand of a Marine. Hand stuck. A U.S. senator just broke the hand of a Marine. You're a coward. Punk. Yeah, go fuck yourself. What'd you say? Senator? Go fuck yourself. You were a shit seal. That's why you got kicked out, fat ass.
Everybody sit down, please. Sit down, please. Everybody sit down, please. Everybody sit down, please.
I'm getting out of here.
That's fine. Everybody sit down, please. Is your hand okay? No, it's not.
This is disgusting. Disgusting.
Just pull it out.
Disgusting.
Yeah, why in the world would an elected official, why do they have congressional police, right? Capitol Hill police. Why would a member of the U.S. Senate, the police are removing a protester and he'd walk over, yeah, I want to manhandle him true. I mean, this is crazy. Here's another angle of what happened. This is bizarre. You have a Marine in dress blues in the formal Marine uniform shouting that he doesn't want people to die for Israel on Capitol Hill. Obviously, he's being disruptive, so the police remove him. A member of the U.S. Senate, a sitting senator runs over and joins the cops in, I mean, this, here we go.
To name that shows you exemptness as leaders. This is wrong. And nobody wants to fight for Israel.
A reminder to all our
Commandant, please stand up as a Marine and stand up for America.
What is he doing? Like, who does this U.S. senator? He just runs over. Oh, I want to mess up this guy too. Right? There's loads of Capitol Police there. Like, what in the world is he doing?
For America.
And there he is.
No one wants to fight for Israel. No one.
Yeah, that's the angle we just watched. But I mean, I'm just like, yes, this man is very heroic for doing this. I mean, it's very, very admirable that he took this stand, but it's also like, I don't understand, why would a member of a senator jump into a fight like that? I mean, I'm sure that's like in their security training. They tell them, don't do that. Let the professionals, let the cops, the security, the Secret Service do this. I mean, this incident is very bizarre to me. It's very, very bizarre. And I'm just horrified. And again, it is military people and military families that are opposed to this more than anybody. Right. You know, and I mean, I mean, the body count at this point of American servicemen has got to be higher than 6. It's probably in the hundreds. Iran is saying that they project about 537. But I've heard they've raised that to possibly 800 today. And I mean, all the areas around military bases are being struck. I'm hearing a lot of different reports are coming out. There was a CIA base in Saudi Arabia, a CIA headquarters that was apparently destroyed by an Iranian drone today. The report apparently is that the U.S. military, what they did is they evacuated all the bases, the military bases, so that the soldiers wouldn't be in the bases when they were struck. And Iran apparently knew they were going to do that and struck the hotels that they evacuated the soldiers into. They're all in hotels, and they struck the hotels. They just destroyed hotels. And there's video going around of these hotels that have just been completely demolished, right? Where everybody in the hotel is just completely demolished. There's rumors that there were even generals, I'm hearing, that there were high-ranking military people who didn't just get a hotel room, they got a whole floor. And there may have been high-ranking military personnel, brass that were killed in all of this. And I mean, this is absolutely crazy. And, Pete Hegseth is on there saying that we're going to rain death and destruction. And I mean, the girls' school was targeted. They intentionally blew up a girls' school. And now they say they're investigating it. I mean, they are just trying to be as brutal and evil as they possibly can be. And the U.S. public doesn't support it, and Trump's base doesn't support it, and the world isn't for it. And yeah, I have never seen anything like this. Now, another person who's been very heroic, and she gets better every day, is Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was the MAGA congresswoman. You remember, she was Miss QAnon when she first got elected. She was like the symbol of the Trump movement. But she stood up around Epstein. She stood up in opposing war. And now, here she is, and she has been speaking up very boldly.
I do know is most Americans, and it's being proved in polling that's coming out, most Americans are completely against this war because, like you said, the president has made no case for it. We live our ordinary lives, and we don't feel threatened by Iran. We don't walk around thinking that in any moment an Iranian ballistic missile is going to land on our head. We don't. Here's what Americans, and I want to read off this list. This is is what Americans are focused on. 72% of Americans can't afford health insurance. 58% of Americans can't afford car insurance. 67% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 31% of Americans can't afford their back taxes. 50% of Americans are in credit card debt, massive credit card debt. That's where we are in America. And I campaigned with the president. As a matter of fact, I was one of the only Republicans that was out there for Donald Trump when the rest of the neocons, by the way, that are just cheering him on now, had abandoned him and were trying to beat him in a primary and stop him from being president again. I was out there on the front lines for Make America Great Again. And Make America Great Again was supposed to be America first, not Israel first, not any foreign country first, not any foreign people first, but the American people first and our problems. And God bless the Iranian people. I hope to God that they can have a government that is for them and that treats women fairly. But what we have seen happen right now is we have seen over 100 little girls killed at a school from a bomb. And I don't know whose bomb it was, but they're dead today because America and Israel attacked Iran. So that's not really good for Iranian women. And our president is saying that the Iranian people are all of a sudden going to topple their regime. Well, I don't think the Iranian people are going to be toppling their regime when they're getting blown apart by the United States and Israel in an unprovoked attack. And yes, it was unprovoked. And Pete Hegseth said this morning, Megan, he said that we didn't start this war. But I hate to argue with the Secretary of the Department of War. America and Israel definitely started this war, and you can't lie that away to the American people. And so, you know how I feel right now? I am irate. I am furious about this. We are nearly $40 trillion in debt. How much is this war going to cost us? We have seen enough of our American troops dead and murdered for foreign countries. And now we've had 4 dead and murdered, just like you said, for Israel and for the Iranian people, not for the American people. And I don't want to see any more dead and murdered. Our military is filled with some of the greatest people from our country. And God bless their families who are probably losing their minds right now, terrified that their son or daughter or their husband or wife or brother or sister may come home in a flag draped coffin. And then we have the president who, by the way, Megan, this really needs to be said. Donald Trump has said repeatedly on camera and in interviews, he doesn't think he's going to heaven. Well, I want to ask a question, a serious question. What is in his mind? What is his mental state? If he doesn't think he's going to heaven and he is a man towards the end, he's in the 4th quarter, he's towards the end of his life. How does that pan out for the rest of us when we have a president of the United States who doesn't think and is convinced he's not going to heaven? What does that mean his decision making is? He already said to the New York Post today that he doesn't care about the polling. He doesn't care about what the American people think, and he may put troops on the ground. He took this is going to be a few-day war, to now it's going to be maybe 4 weeks or more. I want to say, what is happening to the man that I supported, you supported, the man that denounced what happened in Iraq, the man that said no more foreign wars, no more regime change, promise it on the campaign. J.D. Vance promised it. Tulsi Gabbard promised it. All of them promised it. And we're a year in, and we're in another fucking war, and we've got American troops being killed. I think it's time for America to rip the Band-Aid off, and we need to have a serious conversation about what the fuck is happening to this country and who in the hell are these decisions being made for, and who is making these decisions.
Yeah. Marjorie Taylor Greene just gets better every day. So I'm just going to sum up by kind of telling you where we're at in terms of CPI and what do we do about this? That's what I'm here to tell you. I'm not here to just tell you how bad things are. I mean, there's a lot of channels that do that. They just talk about how bad things are and, exploit bad news and negative feelings for clicks and likes. I'm not here to do that. I'm not here to do that. But the answer that I'm giving you about what we can do about it is not the answer people want, right? It's not the easy, quick fix. I'm telling you, we have to build a movement. But I'll just tell you. So Saturday we had our rally. And we were out in the streets for 4.5 hours, going strong on the bullhorn. we got hundreds of leaflets out there. Irving put together this great leaflet, CPI leaflet, that people were giving out all over the country. And we were out for 5 hours in Union Square. We did great work, and we withstood, but it was tough. We withstood a lot of nasty, people who like are just mentally ill. There's a lot of mental illness these days. There was a woman who basically agreed that the war in Iran shouldn't be a war in Iran, but was anti-Semitic and was like, thought I was Jewish and that I should be yelling at other Jews. I shouldn't talk to black people or something. I don't know. It was weird. And she was just this very, very unhealthy woman who was just kind of yelling at us and getting her anger out and just wouldn't leave us alone. These things happen. There were a couple people that were negative, overwhelming public support. A lot of people stopping and listening at various points when we were speaking on the board, and people applauded. People passing by applauded, which that's a first for me, right? That was a first for me. Usually when we're out there, people listen and they nod a little bit and they go on. But we were out there, we were on the bullhorn, and we would stop speaking, and then like the crowds of just random people going by would applaud, right? It was like the old days. It was like back in the day when Eugene Debs or Gus Hall would be standing on a soapbox, and they'd be out there agitating, and random people would gather in Union Square to listen to the agitators. I mean, it was it was a great moment for CPI. I'm really glad we were out there, and it was such a diverse layer of people that were listening to us. But anyway, hearing that Khamenei was killed was tough for me, right? And I'm not going to try to go too far into that tonight, but I have actually seen Khamenei speak, and it was a pivotal moment in my life. There's a film about my experiences in Iran, that was produced. It's on the CPI website. It's on my personal website as well. It's called Iranian Dream. It came out in the year of 2015. And in that film, they kind of documented my, seeing the Supreme Leader speak in May of 2015. So I'm just going to put that clip on. I did put that clip up that night. That was kind of my first response. But I'm going to tell you what happened after that. So anyway, I came home, and before I went to bed, I just put the clip of how I got to see the Supreme Leader speak. And you can guess, based on watching this clip, I mean, hearing about how the leader of Iran, the spiritual leader of the Islamic Revolution, was ruthlessly murdered. Based on this clip, you'll kind of be able to understand how I was feeling, but there's more to it.
Appointed day came, and I could only get permission in the place of the foreign guests. I had hoped at least my location close to Iran's Supreme Leader.
I was successful. I saw the Supreme Leader. I was able to be just 200 feet away from him. I was able to look up at him right there on the balcony and see his face, see the face of the Iranian Revolution, and be in his presence. The first time that I teared up was when I saw, the Supreme Leader and was able to look at him and just to see him come out and to just see his presence. He has this presence, like you could feel the difference. Even if I couldn't seen him, I would have known when he walked into the room and when he left, even if I were completely blind. You can feel his presence. But the second was to look out on the crowd of people and see, how they responded to him and see how fired up. And I saw that that's who the Iranian Revolution was for. My Iranian dream was to look on the face of the supreme leader and see who it was who wrote that letter and come to understand what was behind that beautifully worded letter. Find out what was behind it. Find out what the society that has a leader like that is like. I felt like I was not just looking at the face of one man, I was looking at the face of the Iranian Revolution. I saw with my eyes the Iranian Revolution. I looked at it with my own eyes. I saw it with my eyes. I saw what this country is about and what it's fighting for. I saw it, all the passion of the people who unfurled those flags and screamed for Palestine.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously you can guess that, for somebody for whom, CPI might not exist if it wasn't for the supreme leader, and the life-changing spiritual experiences I had in Iran and on the Red Crescent ship to Yemen in 2015. And, so I obviously, despite our comrades really coming together and we had a great demonstration and everything, I just had this ick feeling, just sickened by this horrendous murder and this war launching, which I don't know how this war, I don't even know what's going to happen. I still don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of really big questions right now. I had this ick feeling. I went to sleep. I took sleeping pills. Noah stayed at my place. You can ask Noah about this, right? He knows the secret compound that this lovely Brooklyn apartment is in the Bat Cave of New York. I'm just kidding. I just live in an apartment, but I'm joking. The gigantic fortress that I live on, in the mountains, my castle, my Dracula castle. I'm just kidding. Anyway, Noah stayed at my place, we were both pretty tired. Noah had been on a bus all night before, and so we just, got home and, I went to sleep, and so did Noah. And, Noah, slept on the couch over here in this office, and I slept in my bedroom, I just went to sleep, and I woke up at like 4 a.m. And my stomach was acting up, and I was just not feeling well. And I went into the bathroom, and I just felt horrible. My body was just, it was just a sickly, awful state. And I thought, oh my God, it's the stress, it's everything going on. But then I managed to go back to sleep. And when I slept, after that, around, I went to sleep around 4 in the morning, and then my alarm went off at 7:30 because we had to go to church. When I went to sleep for that 3.5 hours, I slept very deeply, and I had a crazy intense dream that I cannot go into detail about here, right? It was a very convoluted, long, complicated dream. But the end of the dream was me explaining why it is so important to do outreach. And I was getting very emotional and fired up and explaining to someone in the dream, that you have to do outreach. You have to go and talk to people. You have to meet people. You have to engage with people, and you have to give people hope and optimism. You can't give people negativity. You can't just give people all the negativity. The world is awful. Be mad, be upset. No, you have to give people hope. You have to give people optimism. And so, I had this long, complicated, convoluted dream that ended with me just going over and over and yelling at somebody about, you have to talk to people, and you have to do outreach, and it has to be positive, and we need to give people hope. And I just was, it was this, and I woke up all of a sudden, and I felt amazing. It was the best I had felt in days. My back felt like it had been massaged. I had energy. I wasn't tired. You ever have that where it's like you've just been sleeping and you've been intensely sleeping, and then you wake up and you're just like, I didn't even need to drink an unnamed diet beverage. No coffee for me that morning. I was just like totally awake immediately. You can ask Noah. I was just totally awake. My body felt amazing. And even though this awful thing had just happened and we were on the brink of World War III and Khamenei had just been ruthlessly murdered and all this happened, I just felt amazing. This spiritual calm had come over me, and I knew what we had to do. And I knew what we needed to do. And I wrote it down. And I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do. If you're a member of CPI, if you were on our meeting today, you know about it. We are launching an outreach campaign that is completely different than any outreach campaign we've done before. A completely unique message, and I'm not going to tell you more about it. It's a surprise. It's a surprise. But if you're in CPI, you probably already know about it. We are going to hit the streets pretty soon with a message that is going to blow people away. It's going to blow people away. It's not a message of this world sucks, it's going to hell, we're on the brink of World War III. I mean, it'd be easy to say that, but it's not a message of be resentful, be angry, hate your parents, hate the government, hate everybody, be really, really mad. Not that. It's a totally uniquely innovationist and CPI message. And we're going to do something very interesting. Let me just put it that way. I'm not going to go into great detail about what it is because I want it to be ready, right? You'll all know about it when you know about it. If you're a CPI member and you've come to some of our recent meetings, I've talked to Noah about it. I've talked to Gabby about it. I've talked to Penny about it. I just told all the people that were at our CPI weekly members check-in about it, and everyone loves it. We are going to engage with people about anti-imperialism. And about the need for a real movement to stop these ugly wars and to break America out of imperialism and build a new America where working families come first, where we have win-win cooperation with nations all over the world. We are going to launch an outreach campaign that is going to be something that people will have never seen anything like this. It is not going to look like anything people have seen before, especially not anything communist. It's going to take people by surprise. And I just, it's been a rough few days for me. I'll be honest, right? Today's Wednesday. I'm streaming again. Glad to be streaming and, glad to be back. Glad of, I still don't, I was kind of hoping that there would be a little more clarity. That's part of why this was happening. That's why I waited. I hoped that maybe there'd be more clarity. There's not more clarity at this point, but I'm just, we have a mission. Our mission, we must build an anti-imperialist movement. The American people are with us. The American people are with us. But unless we have a movement, an organizational infrastructure, not hashtag revolution, not going out and rioting on command from Twitter, but we have communities of solidarity and we have a real movement that can get things done. This isn't going to change. So we have to build that movement. And we have to build the movement. And amid all this horror, obviously, we're going to keep protesting and saying no war against Iran. And obviously, we're going to keep, calling out the imperialists and the globalists and fighting for working families. But we're going to focus on what we're for. And we're going to present what we're for in a way that is really going to surprise people. And this is what we have to do. We have to be the light in the darkness. The light in the darkness. That's what we have to be. Right? There's an old Wobbly song, an IWW song. But we have a glowing dream of how fair the world will seem when each can live his life secure and free. When the earth is owned by labor and there's joy and peace for all in the commonwealth of toil that is to be. Right? Go and listen to that. It's it is one of the Joe Hill Wobbly songs. It's one of the good ones, right? One of the optimistic songs. And it's about we want to build a world where each can live their life secure and free, where there's a vast abundance for all, and an economy that is rationally controlled to unleash human innovation and creativity to a higher level. We have a way out of this nightmare. We have a vision and we have a way out, and that there's just negativity grows on trees right now. Everybody's negative. And so if we have a negative approach, how are we helping? People don't need negativity. People don't need resentment. They don't need alarmism. They need a vision. They need a vision, and we have a vision. And we're going to build a movement that points to a way out of the emerging nightmare. And we already have it with our 4-point plan, innovationism, but we're taking it to another level. And you're going to be blown away. And if you're a CPI member, get ready to do some of the most rewarding activism that you've ever done. You are going to learn to engage with people in a way you haven't before. You know, we emphasize outreach. About 2 years ago, we had the innovationist turn in CPI, right? We had, I mean, it was a purge, but it was a voluntary purge, right? It was two people that were on our board resigned, and they needed to go. They needed to go. They were Khrushchevites, right? You know, they had it in their head that somehow we were going to build CPI and no one would ever call us a cult. No one would ever call us a cult. I don't know how that's going to work, right? If you're an illiberal organization, they're going to call you a cult. And we were going to not, you know, emphasize leadership, and we were going to try to look like, you know, and we were going to, and they also just couldn't appreciate how we were different than communists. Right. And I was saying, look, we are not communists. All right. You know, we are so different from what the American people think communism is. We need to embrace that difference and celebrate that difference and build our own brand. And they were saying, no, we've got to just keep a foot in communism. And at the same time, they're saying we got to keep a foot in communism. And they wanted us to be kind of like the CPGBML of Britain. They wanted us to be dogmatic, hardline MLs. And they wanted us to stick to just being, you know, anti-revisionist. They also had Khrushchevism, right? You know, oh my God, we can't build up Caleb's personality. Oh my God, we have to show people that we're not a cult, and you know, they just didn't get it, right? And you know, we got hit with that, and then we also got hit with some of the internet nonsense. You know, there was some people that weren't really activists that were in CPI that just they enjoyed watching these streams, but they didn't really want to be active. And there are other streams that talk like us, and you know, whatever. So, and we pivoted, and you know, I called a meeting and I gave a speech where I basically said, this is the way CPI is going. And you know, and then as the people left, they you know, had to be assholes. No one can ever just leave politely. You know, they had to like dismantle our dues collection system and a bunch of all the other nonsense. But we pivoted in a new direction called the innovationist turn. And, you know, and then right after that, the Kamala Harris book happened, and then the Peace MAGA campaign happened. And next thing you know, we were in Washington, D.C. at Trump's inauguration, bringing our message of only peace can make America great again. And let me just throw this out there while we're at it. I have to say this, you know, I shouldn't have to say this, but I will say it, you know, before we get to the next part here. But I'll just throw this out there. I'll just throw this out there, right? Our approach during the election was 100% correct. We have absolutely no regrets. And during the election, Kamala Harris's campaign was focused on fighting until the last Ukrainian, confrontation with Russia, condemning Trump for meeting Kim Jong-un. How dare he have a photo op with a dictator, blah, 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 calling for, you know, cracking down on free speech. Trump claimed he was going to end the wars. And in fact, he even campaigned with Muslim leaders. You remember that in Detroit? And Trump said he would end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Trump said he would end the conflict in the Middle East. He would solve it. He kept saying no new wars, you know, and Trump's campaign had Tulsi Gabbard, and it had Tucker Carlson, and it had RFK Jr., and it had voices that wanted peace with Russia and to oppose endless wars, you know. And what we did was we boosted that part of Trump's campaign. And that was the right thing to do, right? And if more people had done that, if more anti-imperialists had done that, things might be different. I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't be different, but that was the right thing to do. The peace wing of the MAGA campaign was the most important voice during the 2024 election cycle. So we boosted it. No regrets, none. Trump lied. Trump, you know, I guess he's beholden to other forces. He did the opposite of what he said he would do. Didn't protect free speech, started deporting people for their Palestine speech. He didn't make peace with Russia. He bombed Iran once. Now he's taken us into World War III. He said the opposite. You remember during his campaign, I won't do World War III. You know, Trump didn't fulfill his promises. That's because elections are not really the determiner. That's because we don't really live in a democracy. Maybe you should read a book called The State and Revolution by Vladimir Lenin, right? That we don't really live in a democracy. We live in a country where he who has the gold makes the rules. It is, you know, the dictatorship of capital. Kind of Marxism 101, folks. Anyone who thinks they're a communist and, you know, so we all knew that. But there was, during the election, that's an opportunity to push your message. And if your message is anti-imperialist agitation, the Peace MAGA campaign was exactly right. And, we boosted it. And thank goodness, look at Marjorie Taylor Greene, who broke with Trump. Look at Tucker. Look at Candace. That was the right position. And it's still the right position, right? The left is dead. The left is dead. They're not really anti-war. If Trump wasn't doing this war, they'd be supporting it. Kamala Harris would probably have done the same thing, but she would have called it girl power, or whatever. It would have been, free the women. It'd be a feminist uprising, and NATO would have supported it. Right. So Trump betrayed his base. We did exactly the right thing during the election. And there are so many people on the internet that don't seem to understand what activism is. They seem to think that they seem to interpret what we were doing as telling people to vote for Trump, which we did not do. That would be illegal, mind you. At no point do you ever see us on the bullhorn saying, vote for Trump. We never said that. We did not say that at no point. And I would say most of CPI did not vote for Trump. Some did. But a lot of us voted for Jill Stein. I'm not even telling who I voted for. I'm not even telling you who I voted for. Maybe I voted for Trump. Maybe I voted for Jill Stein. Maybe I voted for, the flying spaghetti monster. I'm not telling you how I voted. A lot of us, didn't vote for Trump, and we did not endorse any candidate. And we boosted the peace message in the Trump campaign. And that was the right thing to do. A lot of people on the internet don't understand that activism and building a movement and being in the streets with banners and going to Trump's inauguration with a pamphlet about anti-imperialism, that's called organizing. That politics is not who you vote for. And a lot of these folks, had it in their head that, because we did the Peace MAGA campaign, we were therefore supporting Trump. So therefore, this is our fault. If you think that, you are not understanding politics. You are understanding politics on a very, very low level. We did not campaign for Trump. We boosted the peace message of his campaign. He betrayed that peace message, but now Marjorie Taylor Greene is out there talking fire. Thomas Massey is out there talking fire. Tucker Carlson is out there talking fire. Candace Owens is out there talking fire. And we intervened in the election to try and push that forward, and that was the right thing to do. So let's just be clear about that. And again, I'm not doing these streams to be popular, right? I know that, right? I mean, we have, it's a decent sized channel. We're at about 40,000 subscribers, which is decent, and I'd like that to be more. I'd like to sell more books. I'd like to have more people watching. Send me more buy me a coffee so I can use that money to fund CPI. It's all well and good. At the end of the day, we're on here to build a movement. Everything I do is about building a movement. Everything, right? Every book that I wrote because I want to build a movement. Every stream that I do the stream because I want to build a movement. I want you to join a movement. I would like you to recruit you to the Center for Political Innovation. I'd like you to participate in our outreach. I'd like you to help build. My goal is to eventually have community centers around the country where we're engaging in services, educating people about anti-imperialism, building community, building networks, and building up the anti-monopoly coalition that is needed to bring America into the new world and out of the dying colonial system. Everything I do is about building a movement. I'm not an entertainer. All right. My job, I'm a reporter and a journalist, but that's not what I'm on here to do. I'm on here to build a movement. And that's what I'm about. And building a movement is not who you vote for every 4 years. So I just wanted to get that out there. One more thing before I get to the next part here. One more thing, which is do not celebrate the deaths of American servicemen. Do not celebrate the deaths of Israelis. Don't do it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't acknowledge that Iran, look, there's a war going on. Iran should win this war, and U.S. imperialism should lose. And I have no shame in saying that, right? The USA is 100% wrong in attacking Iran. Iran is 100% right in fighting back. Period. End of discussion, right? Revolutionary defeatism. At the end of the day, my enemy is Wall Street. My enemy is London. My enemy is the Pentagon. Iran is right. America is wrong. Period. However, the American servicemen and women are working people, and they are victims. They shouldn't be there, and they're more anti-war than the average Americans are. right? Most Americans are anti-war. The soldiers are more anti-war than average Americans are. But one surefire way to alienate people, to make sure we don't build the movement we need, is to act like somehow we're happy about the the deaths of American servicemen. We're not. We're not. Those are our brothers and our sisters. Those are our fathers. Those are our sons and daughters, mothers. We're not happy about the deaths of American servicemen. We should mourn the deaths of American servicemen. We should be the loudest mourners of these deaths. No American serviceman should die for Wall Street in its effort to destroy the Islamic Republic. No American serviceman should die for Israel and their desire to carry out their Greater Israel project and destroy the axis of resistance. And if we look like we are just America haters and we're just, look, the utter injustice of the situation is obvious, right? And so, seeing how the United States viciously bombed the school and seeing, I can understand that there may be some people that have a gut level, right? A gut level feeling of like Iran should strike back and Iran should strike back. But at the same time, we can't act like we don't sympathize with people who are going to lose family members. We do. We don't want their relatives to die, and we don't celebrate the death of members of our own class, right? And that's really important. And that I see a lot of that, of people that are just angry and alienated, and this kind of politics is just an expression of their alienation, right? They support Iran not because they understand economics and are angry at globalism, imperialism, see Iran as a stronghold of resistance. Danny Haiphong, great example, right? Danny Haiphong hates America, right? He just hates America. That's it. I mean, Danny Haiphong doesn't give two shits about working families, right? He hates flags. He hates Bibles, right? He hates America, right? That's all it is, right? And, I know some things about him. I used to work with him politically, and I know some family stuff about him, and he just hates America, right? And and Danny Haiphong, he's written all kinds of books and he's studied a lot and he's a smart guy, but he hates America, right? So for him, being a communist or an anti-imperialist is a way for him to say, I am really mad at my neighbors. I am really mad at my relatives. I am really mad at the people in the country, and I want everyone to know that I hate them. And so, of course, he embraces the Ayatollahs of Iran because, they're against America, right? Well, we're different than Danny Haiphong. We embrace the Ayatollahs because we love America, and we see America's enemy as being Wall Street and London, right? And we represent with our political message the understanding that will give voice, that will enact the vision of a new America economically reborn beyond globalism, imperialism. We seek to lead the American servicemen and the people in Alabama and Georgia and Texas and Minnesota and Washington State. We seek to lead them to rebuild America outside of the globalist imperialist system, to be friendly with countries like Iran and China and Russia, etc. We love America so much, we want it to join the new world, right? Danny Haiphong hates America so much that he loves China because they're against America. He loves Russia because they're against America. He loves Iran because they're against America. And he wants America to be blown to shreds so that everyone knows that he's right and all of his neighbors and all his relatives can go fuck themselves because Danny's right and he's the smartest guy in the room, right? And there was a time in my life where I felt that way, sure. And I grew out of it. And thank God, and I was spiritually rescued from that. But you don't want to be that kind of person. You really don't, right? Black nationalism is different. Black nationalists love Black people, right? That's different. They love the Black community, the descendants of slaves in America. They are connected to other Black people. They want to separate Black people from America. That's different. But for a lot of young anti-imperialists, right? A lot of young anti-imperialists, it's just an expression. It started out kind of like this for me. I guess my difference was I was always really interested in economics, and most of these people are not very interested in economics. But a lot of young internet communists, communism is the devil in America, and they're mad at America. They don't fit in with their family. They don't fit in with their school and their classmates. They don't fit in with society. They feel alienated from America. So being a communist is a way to give the middle finger to their family, give the middle finger to their relatives, give the middle finger to their classmates, and tell everyone, fuck you all, I support the Ayatollah, fuck you all, I support North Korea, and you all suck. And if that's what your politics is, it's not politics, and it's not helpful. It's teenage Satanism. It's not real politics, right? And it's not helpful, and it's not serious, and it's never going to take over. And if you express your teenage Satanism in a way that hits people in the gut, right? Imagine that you're a mother and your son has just been killed. You don't care about economics. You don't care about the history of Mao Zedong. You don't care about, you're just hurt that your relative is dead, right? Imagine that you're a child and your father has just been killed. You don't care about Deng Xiaoping theory. You don't care about Lenin's theory of imperialism. You're just hurt. And so you're hurting. You're in that huge state of pain. And then somebody somewhere who maybe you've never met or they don't know anything about you is jumping up and down going, woohoo! Yeah, I'm mad that your relative is dead. How are you going to feel about that person? That's going to hurt you even more. Not only did I just lose somebody in my life who I love, and I don't really understand why they were there. But on top of that, now there's people that I don't know that are somehow happy about this, that you're going to be hurt by that person. You're not going to want to work with them. So, we understand that American imperialism is the enemy here. And we understand that our real enemy as Americans is at home. And we understand that Iran should win and America should lose. We understand that Iran is defending itself against imperialism, that Iran is a stronghold of anti-imperialism, and that, we understand that, but we don't hate America. We don't hate the American people. We don't hate the American country. We are against globalism, imperialism, and we want to rally the American people to understand that they should break their country out of globalism, imperialism. We have to be serious politically. And, it's taken me a long time to realize that. Right. And, I remember, when I was like a teenager, I would argue, just talk about, the history of U.S. imperialism. And there was a member of my family that'd always be like, you hate America. You hate America. And I would say to them, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? And they couldn't even tell me what that meant. Right. And so, and that relative of mine was just blindly patriotic, having grown up during the Cold War, and they were wrong, right? And that was a thing. It was like a 90s thing. I don't know if people remember that. Now, it's long past, but for a long time, during the Bush years, but even earlier than that, the response to anyone who gave a leftist, like a Noam Chomsky critique of U.S. foreign policy, talked about U.S. imperialism, the response was, you hate America. Why do you hate America? Right. And, and it's weird because, so that, I just kind of learned to laugh that off. And, one of the Maoist groups I was around kind of embraced that. And they're like, yeah, we do hate America. And that was dumb. But, I've come to realize, though, that when I talk about hating America, I don't hate the flag. I don't hate country music. I don't hate the Second Amendment. I don't hate McDonald's. I don't hate baseball. I hate U.S. foreign policy. I hate imperialism. I hate the way this country is set up, and I would like to change it. But there are, unfortunately, a lot of communists. Unfortunately, communists are such a small minority of the U.S. population. We're talking about like 1% of 1% of 1%, right? But there are, unfortunately, a lot of so-called communists in America, people who join communist groups, that they don't really hate U.S. imperialism. They don't know anything about economics. They don't know anything about, all they know is, this society sucks and I'm angry, and they hate their neighbors. They hate their neighbors. They hate their relatives. They hate their classmates. That's what they're mad about. Don't be that person. Yes, we got to rescue America. Swine class gets it. We got to rescue America. That's what we got to do. We don't hate America. We are the people who can point America towards saving itself. And at the end of the day, we're not going to do it. And that's what the Little Red Book, right? Mao Zedong in the Little Red Book, he says the masses are the real heroes. We ourselves are often childish and ignorant. And at the end of the day, we're just going to provide direction. There's a giant boulder rolling down a mountain. That's the American people, right? It's going to get to the point that the avalanche is inevitable, and the boulders, and it's all going to start rolling down the mountain. Our role as revolutionaries is we have the ability to nudge the boulder this way, nudge the boulder that way, to give guidance to the avalanche that's coming. The American people are going to awaken, and they're going to explode in rebellion. And we are going to be the people armed with our understanding and our ideology that can guide that avalanche in the right direction. That's all we can hope to do. But it is the masses of people that are the real heroes. We will not create the avalanche. We will not be the avalanche. The avalanche is coming from the American people. And that's, when you talk about left adventurism or terrorism, that's putting yourself in the place of the masses of people. Right. And that's a common mistake that leftists do, is they think, well, I'm going to go out and do some illegal action. No, you're not. No, you're not. The masses of people are the real heroes, and they will be capable of heroism that we can only imagine, that we can only dream of. Right. They will blow us away with their heroism and their selflessness and their ability to go out and fight. We will be in awe of what the American people will do when the avalanche comes, when the explosion happens. But we ourselves can offer the ideology and the understanding of what to do, right? They will have the energy, they will have the heroism, and we will guide it in the right direction. We've been chosen by history to guide. That's what we've been chosen to do. But we are not the real heroes. The masses are the real heroes. And you have to keep that in mind. And if you hate the masses, you cannot lead them. You can't. Right. And people like Danny Haiphong hate the masses. Danny Haiphong hates the masses. Right. We don't. We love the masses. Now, we don't make the opposite mistake. We don't try to, we don't try to during the new communist movement in the 1970s, you had a lot of these communist groups that got jobs in factories and, wore, baseball caps with the beer brands on it. And, I'm just a regular working man. We're not going to do something stupid like that. Right. We do want the masses to think we're smart, and we do want to put forward solutions to improve the country, right? We're not tailing the masses. We're not pretending, we're not going to, just act stupid. So, because we think the masses are stupid and then they'll fall. No, we're not doing that either, right? We're not engaging in tailism, and we're not putting ourselves in place of the masses. We're certainly not hating the masses. We're putting forward a line of march. That's what we're doing. We're putting forward a trajectory, a line of march. We're putting forward a vision for a new America. That's our 4-point economic plan. That's a transitional program of how the United States could be brought out of imperialism. And we're trying to build the nucleus, the foundations of a movement that could bring America out of imperialism. That's what we're doing. We're providing a line of march. That's what we're doing. And by providing a line of march, by putting forward a transitional program, by building the apparatus that can educate people about anti-imperialism, that's what we're doing, right? That's what we're doing, right? And that's what we can do. And you can't do it if you hate the masses. You can't. And we don't hate the masses. We are the ultimate patriots. We're not national chauvinists. We're patriots. But anyway, I just wanted to get that out of my system. So, the second half of the show is me answering your questions, which is great. And we have 2 really good questions that have already come in. Questions can be sent via Buy Me a Coffee. Rumble rants also work. You got a couple Rumble rants, 2 Rumble rants that are in. But if anyone wants to send a Buy Me a Coffee, that would be great. Another Buy Me a Coffee came in. Very good. So anyway, but yeah, so on that note, what I'm going to do for the remainder of the first half is it's kind of coincidence. I mean, I guess we knew the danger of war was real. We published Rosa Luxemburg's classic anti-war pamphlet, the Junius pamphlet. This is Rosa Luxemburg's pamphlet that she wrote in 1915, just after World War I broke out. She wrote this pamphlet that she was put in prison for writing. I think she wrote it in prison, and then they put her back in jail after she published it. And she put it out under a fake name, Junius. That's why it's called the Junius pamphlet. It's called the Junius pamphlet, The Crisis of Social Democracy, where she calls out the German Social Democratic Party for being collaborators in war, and she explains why World War I is happening. And it's a classic Marxist text, right? Of Rosa Luxemburg was the German Marxist who refused to go along with the other Marxists and support World War I. The German Social Democratic Party sold out in support of the war. She opposed it. So we republished her pamphlet, a special new edition that we published. It's got the full text of the pamphlet. It's also got Lenin's essay, Imperialism and the Split in Socialism. That's the essay where he talks about the aristocracy of labor, where he defines imperialism as an economic system. And then we also have Rosa Luxemburg's manifesto that she wrote just before she died, right after she got out of prison at the end of World War I. What does the Spartacus League want? And it's her like manifesto, for the Spartacus League. We put it all into one volume with a new introduction written by myself. This is our edition of the Junius pamphlet, the classic anti-war pamphlet by Rosa Luxemburg that I found myself quoting quite a bit lately. I've been quoting it a lot lately because it's pretty relevant to everything we've been talking about. And if you want to get a copy of it, great. It's got a lot of information about World War I and the economics driving World War I. You can get a copy of it. I'll just put the link in the chat, but I'm going to read you the introduction that I wrote honoring Rosa Luxemburg. And then we'll do the roll call, and then I will answer your questions, and then we'll be done after I answer the questions tonight. So, order your copy if you want to get a copy of it. I'm going to read you my introduction. Send any questions you've got for the second half of the show. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin or Rumble Rant or Cash App Caleb Maupin 22. I'm going to read you the introduction to our new edition of the Junius pamphlet. And so there we go. So yeah, here's the new introduction to the Junius pamphlet. When the Communist International held its first gathering in Moscow on March 2nd, 1919, Lenin took to the podium and proclaimed the following words. On behalf of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, I declare the first Congress of the Communist International open. First, I would ask all representatives present to rise in tribute to the finest representatives of the Third International, Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg. They had died just a few weeks before, ruthlessly murdered by socialists who had been handed power amid the chaos of Germany at the end of the First World War and would eventually create the Weimar Republic. It is tragic the way Rosa Luxemburg is now remembered by leftists in the West. Among the pink and blue-haired, body-pierced anti-populists who consider any talk of economic struggle as class reductionism, Rosa Luxemburg's face can occasionally be found on buttons, adorned next to transgender symbols and rainbow flags. You can see Rosa Luxemburg was a woman, after all. She wasn't one of those dead white men. And most importantly, she never took power. If the Spartacus Bund had been successful in 1919 and Rosa Luxemburg had ended up leading some kind of revolutionary government in Germany, you can be sure the New York Times and the woke college professors would accuse her of violating human rights or being authoritarian. But Rosa Luxemburg died, and thus she got a clean record. She is an empty vessel. If only Rosa Luxemburg had won, it would have been real communism, you can be sure many young feminist Marxists have said. It helps their case that Rosa Luxemburg criticized Lenin and rejected his concept of the vanguard party. However, aside from a few choice quotes that seem to line up with liberal anti-Stalinism, they do not understand what this debate was about either. The tragic and infuriating reality is that the people who now preserve Rosa Luxemburg's memory are the modern practitioners and equivalents of the people who killed her. The most horrific example is the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, a socialist policy lobby funded by the taxpayer dollars of the German state. The organization repeats NATO propaganda against Russia and even has offices maintained in Tel Aviv. Socialists, who exist as appendages of the Western colonial governments, giving them a more humanitarian edge while promoting their wars, are exactly what Rosa Luxemburg spent her life opposing, a fight for which she ultimately gave her life. To rescue Rosa Luxemburg's memory and the message of her work from the fools and deceivers who have hijacked it is exactly why we are republishing her most brilliant and widely circulated text, the Junius pamphlet, The Crisis of Social Democracy. It's a pamphlet that speaks to the realities that ring true far more loudly in our time than when she wrote them. Rosa Luxemburg was born to a Jewish family in Poland. As a result of a childhood illness, she walked with a limp for her entire life. In a time when women were not encouraged to get an education and study, she proved herself to have an exceptionally sharp mind. When she was confined in the hospital as a child of 5 years old, she taught herself to read and write. As a teen, she studied economics and got involved with Marxist politics that were growing in popularity among European intellectuals. In her final year of high school, she was denied a gold medal for academic achievement because of her involvement in radical organizations, deeming her to be not in proper moral standing to receive the award. She went on to study political economy at the University of Zurich, and she became the first Polish woman ever to receive a PhD in political economy. She returned to Poland and became a well-known writer and organizer among Polish radicals. The popular trend among Polish Marxists was to advocate for independence from the Russian Empire. Marx himself had given his blessing to the nationalist movement. Rosa Luxemburg had the courage to disagree. Based on her analysis of the Polish economy, she could see that breaking away from Russia would not be to Poland's economic benefit. She argued that instead, Poland should join with other peoples of Eurasia in joint socialist development, with workers of different nationalities joining together. Rosa Luxemburg's doctoral dissertation, The Industrial Development of Poland, was widely circulated and infuriated the Marxist community. How dare she not embrace the trendy cause of the era? Lenin and others vehemently denounced her position. But history has now shown that she was correct, not in her assertions about the national question overall, but in relation to Poland. Polish nationalism, like many, quote, revolutionary movements throughout the European mainland at the time, was being manipulated by intelligence forces. The British Empire had long sought to repel any Russian influence on the European mainland. The greatest fear of the British has always been a German-Russian alliance, as it would spell the end of their domination of the world economy. When Poland was a socialist country, as part of the Warsaw Pact, developing in coordination with the Soviet Union and other countries, it experienced massive economic expansion. The fall of the Eastern Bloc, separating Poland from Russia and tying it to the West, made life much worse for the Polish people. The dock workers, who were organized to work against socialism by the CIA-backed Solidarity Union, lost their jobs in the 1990s. The strength of the Soviet Union was Stalin's ability to unify the different nationalities of Great Russia. The way different peoples, especially those of Slavic heritage, have been divided has not benefited them historically. Russian President Putin has consistently criticized Lenin for his fixation on national differences, saying they dreamt of a world revolution that would wipe out national states. That is why they were so generous in drawing borders and bestowing territories to national republics. He has elsewhere said they planted an atomic bomb under the building that is called Russia, and which would later explode. The virus of nationalist ambitions is still with us, and the landmine laid at the initial stage. Just like Marxist groups today avoid opposing the danger of a new world war, but run to protest Trump or against ICE or in favor of LGBT or Black Lives Matter, almost on command by CNN, the Marxists of Poland, with money covertly funneled by British intelligence, were rallying around the trendy liberal cause of breaking Poland away from Russia. Rosa Luxemburg said the focus should be on organizing a workers' movement and fighting for economic demands. And of course, this made her unpopular. Rosa Luxemburg's rejection of Lenin and his concept of the Party of New Type must be understood in the context of her work, The Mass Strike. Luxemburg observed how in revolutionary crises, the masses are suddenly emboldened with a new sense of bravery and courage. While strikes tend to involve a labor union against an employer, the mass strike phenomenon involves entire cities being swept into a state of revolt. Luxemburg's writing on mass strikes explains, quote, "The mass strike is not artificially made, not decided at random, not propagated, but it is a historical phenomenon which, at a given moment, results from social conditions with historical inevitability. The rigid, mechanical, bureaucrat conception cannot conceive of the struggle save as the product of organization at a certain stage of its strength. On the contrary, the living, dialectical explanation makes the organization the product of the struggle. The masses are the decisive element, and they are the rock on which the final victory of the revolution will be built." Lenin seems to have shared her sentiments to some degree, writing, "Revolutions are festivals of the oppressed and exploited. At no other time are the masses of the people in a position to come forward so actively as the creators of a new social order as at the time of revolution. At such times, people are capable of performing miracles." Rosa Luxemburg thus approached Lenin's call for a highly disciplined organization with a single newspaper, rather than privately owned presses, and a strict ironclad discipline with suspicion. She feared it would suppress the spontaneity she had studied and celebrated so much. It is important to remember Rosa Luxemburg and Vladimir Lenin were talking about building revolutionary movements in very different circumstances. Lenin's party of new type would have to function under illegality in the context of czarist autocracy among a population that was still largely agrarian and illiterate. Rosa Luxemburg's work and understanding of how to organize were largely based on her experiences in Germany, which had already industrialized and had a vast legal Marxist movement and network of labor unions. Rosa Luxemburg was organizing in the Western liberal context. She wrote, "The ultra-centralism advocated by Lenin is full of the sterile spirit of the overseer. He is concerned not with the creative spirit of the proletariat, but with the control of party activity." Rosa Luxemburg moved to Germany around the turn of the century because it was the center of the global Marxist movement. She obtained German citizenship through marriage and worked in Berlin as an educator, teaching daily classes on Marxist theory to labor union members, community organizers, and others who struggled to learn the important concepts such as surplus value, overproduction, and the tendency of the falling rate of profit, all of which have long been forgotten by the woke Marxists of today, who think all Marxism consists of is bemoaning the unfairness of employee and employer relations. Marx's understanding that capitalism is constantly revolutionizing the instruments of production and thus exacerbating its built-in weaknesses, making the economy less and less stable, is more relevant than ever in the age of AI, the gig economy, and the ever-present decline of Western economies. Rosa Luxemburg understood these concepts better than anyone and taught thousands of people to know them for themselves. Rosa Luxemburg flourished in the fight against Edward Bernstein, who proposed to water Marxism down into liberal reformism. Her text, Reform or Revolution, relied primarily on economic data to show that universal male suffrage was not causing the Western countries to gradually turn into socialism bit by bit, and that all the problems of poverty amid plenty still applied. Karl Kautsky, the big boss of German Marxism, had no love for Rosa Luxemburg. Kautsky was often dubbed the Pope of Marxism and had worked closely with Engels and published many of Marx's works posthumously. Kautsky set the line of the German Social Democratic Party in the Second International, and as the First World War was on the horizon, he assured everyone there was nothing to worry about. With his theory of ultra-imperialism, he claimed that the rise in military spending was no cause for alarm, and that the colonial powers would simply form a cartel, much like the big banks. Rosa Luxemburg disagreed. She had developed her own understanding of economics of imperialism, explained in her book, The Accumulation of Capital. Her ideas were similar but different from Vladimir Lenin's concept of imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. On the fundamental points, they agreed. Western monopolies were stretching their tentacles across the world, seizing new markets to prevent a crisis of overproduction, and in the process, keeping Eastern nations in poverty and destroying their domestic industries. Where Rosa Luxemburg and Vladimir Lenin diverged is that Luxemburg saw the phenomenon as a much more long-standing economic reality, whereas Lenin marked the 1890s as a turning point. Some of what Luxemburg wrote, drawing from Marx's understanding of colonialism as primitive accumulation and imperialism being almost intrinsic to capitalism from the beginning, brings to mind the work of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the leader of the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement in America, and his understanding of the colonial mode of production. Regardless, the German authorities prosecuted Rosa Luxemburg for urging young German men to refuse military service. She was accused of spreading disinformation about the army by highlighting the abusive, dehumanizing, and degrading practices enlisted men were subjected to. Her trial and appeal quickly backfired on the authorities, and they had hoped to silence her. But testimonies from thousands of former soldiers about the horrific realities of German militarism amplified her message from the witness stand. Rosa Luxemburg became a kind of socialist celebrity, speaking across Germany about the danger of a new world war, a danger her boss, Karl Kautsky, refused to recognize, and the need to oppose the militarization of society. When the First World War broke out on August of 1914, Rosa Luxemburg was rounded up as a noted anti-war voice. From prison, she composed this pamphlet, her most widely studied economic work. Her pamphlet explained in detail the economic causes of the First World War as the colonial powers battled for control of world markets and condemned the leaders of the Marxist movement who had sold out and betrayed their anti-war pledges and were actively cooperating with the most horrific war humanity had yet seen. The pseudonym she used, Junius, was an homage to Lucius Junius Brutus, who had defended the Roman Republic from an attempt to restore the monarchy, much as she opposed Germany collapsing into authoritarian military rule amid the horrendous war. Rosa warned that the economic causes of the war wouldn't go away, and that this kind of ugly barbarism would become more and more part of life. She warned that Europe was headed the way of the Roman Empire. Friedrich Engels once said, "Bourgeois society stands at a crossroads, either a transition to socialism or a regression into barbarism." What does regression into barbarism mean to our lofty European civilization? Until now, we have all probably read and repeated these words thoughtlessly without suspecting their fearsome seriousness. A look around us at this moment shows what the regression of bourgeois society into barbarism means. This world war is a regression into barbarism. The triumph of imperialism leads to the annihilation of civilization. At first, this happens sporadically for the duration of a modern war. But then, when the period of unlimited wars begins, it progresses toward its inevitable consequences. Today, we face the choice exactly as Friedrich Engels foresaw it a generation ago. Either the triumph of imperialism and the collapse of all civilization as in ancient Rome, depopulation, desolation, degeneration, a great cemetery, or the victory of socialism. And that means the conscious, active struggle of the international proletariat against imperialism and its methods of war. This is the dilemma of world history, an either or. The scales are wavering before the decision of the class-conscious proletariat. The future of civilization and humanity depends on whether or not the proletariat resolves manfully to throw its revolutionary broadsword into the scales. In this war, imperialism has won. Its bloody sword of genocide has brutally tilted the scale toward the abyss of misery. The only compensation for all the misery and all the shame would be if we learn from the war how the proletariat can seize mastery of its own destiny and escape the role of lackeys of the ruling classes. She was released amid the chaos of Germany's defeat in 1918. The sailors and then the army itself were in a state of revolt. The Social Democrats and labor unions were essentially handed control of the government. Kautsky, Ebert, Schneiderman, Nosk, and other bigwig social traitors who had supported the First World War now had the task of making sure that the revolution among the German people, as a horrific war ended, did not lead to anything good. With white hair and a frail condition from years of imprisonment, Rosa Luxemburg joined other revolutionaries to merge the Spartacus Bund into the German Communist Party on January 1st, 1919. While she'd been critical of Lenin, she looked to Soviet Russia for inspiration and wanted to establish a Germany that would align with it. When labor unionists in Berlin, affiliated with the Independent Social Democratic Party, went on strike, opposing plans to create a new capitalist constitution in Weimar, but wanting a socialist country, on January 5th, the result was much bigger than expected. Workers across Berlin went on strike, and the demonstrations swelled into the hundreds of thousands. A revolutionary committee was elected, and it began acting as the de facto government of Berlin. Gustav Nosk, a social democrat, was given command of the military and began negotiating with the Revolutionary Committee about what came next, as Berlin was in a state of dual power. Nosk eventually brought in the military and retook Berlin from the Revolutionary Committee. After the revolt was crushed on January 13th, militias of anti-communist soldiers called Freikorps, or free officers, began roaming the streets of Berlin, attacking communists. Posters were put up all over the city calling for Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht to be killed. On January 15th, Rosa Luxemburg was discovered in an apartment with Karl Liebknecht in Berlin's Wilmersdorf district. She was arrested by the Freikorps and taken to the Eden Hotel, which was functioning as a kind of temporary prison for the military. She and Liebknecht were interrogated and shot. Her body was dumped into the Landwehr Canal. This was an extrajudicial killing done at the behest of socialists who cooperated with anti-communist militias. Gustav Nosk later claimed he had not ordered the two to be killed, but that the captain had acted without his permission. Anger swelled in the streets following the kidnapping and assassination. The German military staged a trial, hoping to appease the public. The main perpetrators, who insisted they were acting on orders from Gustav Nosk, were never charged. One lieutenant, Kurt Vogel, received a 2-year prison sentence for illegally disposing of Rosa Luxemburg's body. He was broken out of prison by members of the German military. This book contains the text of Rosa Luxemburg's famous anti-war pamphlet, laying out the causes of the First World War and calling out the socialists who supported it, debunking their false claims. This text is the translation of Dave Hollis, posted to the Marxist Internet Archive in the public domain with permission granted to copy and distribute. We have included the powerfully worded manifesto published in December of 1918, right after Rosa Luxemburg was released from prison, What Does the Spartacus League Want?, as well as Lenin's famous essay, Imperialism and the Split in Socialism, condemning the Social Democrats' betrayal and explaining its economic basis, the aristocracy of labor. We republished this piece of important history shortly after the publication of Mystical Stalinism and the Struggle Against Revisionism in America, because it is extremely relevant. Socialism in America repeats war propaganda against Russia, China, Iran, etc. Socialists are better defenders of the bourgeoisie today than the bourgeoisie themselves, slandering, defaming, and threatening violence against anyone who opposes the danger of a new world war. When the Uhuru movement were indicted and nearly imprisoned just for their anti-war speech, the socialists refused to support them. Socialism in America, just like German social democracy, is nothing more than a wing of the imperialist system. In these times, the Center for Political Innovation emphasizes the economics of decaying capitalism and the need for a government of action that fights for working families. We are doing as Lenin said, not begging for a seat at the social imperialist table, but going lower and deeper to the real masses, with an ideology not tainted by the destructive spirit that accompanies the Marxist philosophy, while embracing and studying the new economy rising from anti-colonial revolutions around the world. The Center for Political Innovation marches ahead. we take with us the great example, as well as the intellectual contributions of Rosa Luxemburg, a brilliant political economist and activist who, like us, refused to conform to the trendy radicalism of her day and made great sacrifices. She was not willing to be part of the movement that functioned as a leftist face for imperialism. Neither are we. And that is my introduction to our republication of the Junius pamphlet by Rosa Luxemburg. And you can read the whole thing for yourself. It's got the whole pamphlet plus the 2 additional appendix pieces. So check out the Junius pamphlet, the new edition of that the Center for Political Innovation has published. And on that note, we'll do the roll call. Names and locations, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations, who is with us tonight? Names and locations, names and locations, who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations, names and locations, who is with us tonight? Who is with us tonight? Names and locations, who is with us? Who is with us? Chuck in Texas, Cameron in New Hampshire, Fakabu in Montreal, Ryan in Kansas City. Good to see you. Good to see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Alex in Brazil. Jane in New Zealand. St. Joseph, Missouri. Steward. Good to see you, Steward. Irene in New York City. Good to see you. Pensacola, Florida. Jacob Kirkland. Tom in Poland. Master Jack in South Africa. Ed in Louisville. Deborah in Florida. Huey Long in the South. Madeline in Detroit. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Swine Class in Baltimore. Good to see you. Swine Class in Baltimore. Patch in Arizona. Twilly Willy Wit. Boom Boom. Rachel in Milwaukee. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, we got a heartland following, right? You know. That's good. We got a lot of people in the Minnesota area, Wisconsin, places like that. Very good. Very good. Very, very good. Very, very good. All right. Well, listen, folks, I am going to answer people's questions. But before I do that, I'm going to give you one last chance to do it. I do have another item. I'm not going to get into great detail about this tonight because we're going to interview somebody about this, I think tomorrow night, if not tomorrow night, soon. So amid everything else that's going on, right, if there couldn't be yet another blow to world peace, you know, one thing on this channel that we have been doing is we've been supporting Dr. Hak Jahan, the political prisoner in South Korea right now, the lifelong peace activist and good friend of North Korea, very close to North Korea, has been given medals and awards by North Korea, along with her late husband, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon. She's in prison. She's 83 years old. She's in prison, pretrial detention, right? Or you know, detainment as she's on trial. She's in a tiny prison cell in South Korea as she's on trial for a minor bribery charge. And they're torturing her, basically, this 83-year-old woman. And we've been supporting Dr. Hak Jahan because of her peace activism, because she's invested millions of dollars into North Korea, because she's one of the main advocates of the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. You know, we have been huge supporters of her. And if it's not bad enough that she's in jail and in South Korea on trumped up charges, if it's not bad enough that that's happening, today the Supreme Court of Japan upheld the dissolution of the church in Japan. The Unification Church is now officially dissolved in Japan. And the reasoning is that in the past, they have practiced predatory fundraising in Japan. I don't know the details of it, but there were some unethical things that they did in raising money. And that's wrong, right? And I brought Luke on this channel like last week to talk about that. You know, that's wrong. And they admit that there were members of their church that did bad things. But, you know, if we're going to be dissolving churches because members did bad things, why haven't we dissolved the Catholic Church for all the child molesting priests, right? Well, those priests who molested children should go to jail, and people who covered it up should go to jail. But we haven't dissolved the church, right? The Unification Church admits that there were some people in their church that fundraised in Japan in unethical ways, but you can't dissolve a religion. And it sets a really dangerous precedent. If people in a church do something bad, they should be punished for it. But if you then have the government announce that because this religious group did something bad in the past, we're going to forcibly dissolve this religious organization, that is a huge threat to freedom of religion. And Japan is supposed to be a liberal democratic country, right? It's supposed to be a country with freedom of religion. And the Supreme Court of Japan forcibly dissolved a church yesterday. That's a big problem. And we're going to talk about that more on this channel. And it's tragic because more than ever, Dr. Hak Jahan's message is reconciliation, peace, forgiveness. She brings Jews and Muslims together. She went to North Korea. She was born in North Korea. She fled North Korea as an anti-communist religious person. And, she spent her life building this anti-communist religious movement with her late husband. And then in the 1990s, she went back to North Korea and became friends with the North Koreans because she believes in forgiveness and reconciliation. So right as we're on the brink of World War III, the leader of this religious movement who spent her life, being dedicated to forgiveness and reconciliation is in jail, and her church is dissolved in Japan. So that is just wrong. It's wrong on many levels. And no matter what you think about the Unification Church and their complicated history and their complicated theology, she shouldn't be in jail, and they should be allowed to practice their religion in Japan. The government of Japan shouldn't be dissolving churches over fundraising issues. It's pretty crazy. And Jehovah's Witnesses are apparently next on the list. They're on the brink of, they're going to outlaw Jehovah's Witnesses in Japan, it looks like. This is craziness. So on that note, I thought I would put on a Unification Church song. So if you've got any more questions, a lot of people have sent questions and I really appreciate it. If you got any more questions to send in, please do so. I will put, go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. A lot of people ask really good questions. So I'm going to be on here pretty late tonight answering the good questions people sent in, but I appreciate it. I really do. People had some really insightful thoughts and I really appreciated it. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. Send me your questions. I'm going to put on March of the New Age, a Unificationist hymn, one of their more lively, go, 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 battle Satan hymns. And we're going to put that on. And then I'm going to start answering people's questions. Here we go. March of the New Age.
The whole world, heaven and earth, God's will for all shall be fulfilled. Teach to all men God's divine word, source of the Father's kind.
There you go. I actually find that song to be very inspiring. I just love the go 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 aspect. It's like done, win the whole world, heaven and earth. I actually really like that song. It's funny. I can't find very many versions of that song. A lot of their hymns I can find many versions of online. That song, that's really the only. There's a bunch of like karaoke versions of that song online, but that is the only like performance of that song I can find online. I love that song, right? I just find it to really just kind of have this atmosphere of like go go go. I really like it. But anyway, all right, so we got a lot of questions tonight, which is good, and I really appreciate it. You guys have stepped up. There were a number of questions that came in over the weekend. There were about 3 questions that came in over the weekend, and there were also a few questions that came in tonight. Any more questions? Buymeacoffee.com, Caleb Maupin. All right, so the first question is, why Syria and Venezuela just got regime changed in the past 2 years? Assad was being declared having won. Maduro and the U.S. were supposedly talking. Fucking Dulce's latest statement on Iran strikes sucks. Yeah, now there's something interesting on that, right? So Max Blumenthal reported a while back that the U.S. Department of Justice had an indictment of Dulce Rodriguez also, right? That Maduro, the U.S. government indicted Maduro, and then when Trump got in, they just kidnapped him from Venezuela. But apparently, Dulce Rodriguez is also indicted also. And Max Blumenthal reported that. Gray Zone got that information. And now it's confirmed. There's also an indictment of Dulce Rodriguez. And so basically, the negotiations, Venezuela is surrounded militarily. They're not able to export any oil. The USA has a naval blockade on them. They are being allowed to export oil to the United States. Their president has been kidnapped, and basically, Dulce Rodriguez is running the country with a gun to her head. At any point, they could then kidnap her also. And it's shitty, and it's awful. And yeah, I noticed they put out a statement supporting Khamenei, and they removed it from their website. I mean, it's tragic what's happening. That said, I don't think the Venezuelan revolution is over because there's a huge mass movement. I mean, it's not one person. Dulce Rodriguez comes out of that mass movement. She's also governing with a gun to her head. She's basically trying to prevent the United States from invading Venezuela and creating a civil war in Venezuela, right? The idea is they'll be able to kind of stay in power as long as they, give America oil and don't give oil to Cuba, and like they're governing with a gun to their head. The country's been taken hostage. That's what's going on. The country has been taken hostage, and the economic conditions in the country, the USA is basically allowing them to sell their oil to America, which is a huge relief for them economically, and allowing them to start importing products they couldn't get for a while in exchange for basically, I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. I don't think there's been a full counter-revolution as of yet, but they're governing with a gun to their head, and it's not good. And they mobilized thousands of people to march to the Iranian embassy in support of Khamenei and support of Iran. But yeah, the official government statements that are being given by Dulce are very careful, and it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. It's an absolute mess, and it can't hold. It's in this weird state of political limbo. As things develop with Iran and this conflict with Iran develops, we'll see which way Venezuela goes. Venezuela could go into a full counter-revolution, or Venezuela, I mean, who knows what could happen, right? But as of now, Maduro and his spouse are being held illegally in Miami. I don't know if you saw the latest, but they're not allowing the Venezuelan government to provide them legal counsel. So at that point, Maduro's here and he has no way to pay for a lawyer because the Venezuelan government is the Department of Justice has said that they won't allow the Venezuelan government to pay for his lawyer. So how is he supposed to pay? I mean, he's on trial. He could, in theory, get the death penalty for being a drug trafficker, which is absurd. He's not a drug trafficker. But on top of that, they're not letting him pay a lawyer. I mean, it's kidnapping, right? It's absolutely absurd what Trump has done, and this is not what people voted for. With the Maduro issue, I saw there was a lot more people in the MAGA camp that were going along with it. But on the Iran thing, there's a lot less support. But there you go. There you go. Yeah, it's a awful situation. It's absolutely awful, and I don't know which way it could go. I think Dulcie is trying to do the best she can under these kind of circumstances, but Venezuela has a gun to their head, and you know, yeah, we'll see what happens next. And at this point, it is tied up with Iran, so we'll see. Christine asked this question, and this is a very, very, very good question. It's a long one, but that's okay. People, that's what's good about Buy Me a Coffee is you can write long questions. This isn't the longest one. There's actually a longer one after this. But Christine said, hello, I will need a lot of help understanding why Professor Richard Wolff's lectures on worker-owned cooperatives are problematic. I already view them as a solution for decreasing poverty while creating happier, safer, innovative, productive workers. I want humans to control the means of production. I can't understand why billionaires or millionaires should exist. I can't understand why any privatization is good. Well, that's kind of contradictory, right? I'm just saying, because what Richard Wolff advocates is he doesn't advocate a centrally planned economy. He advocates private worker cooperatives. So, that is privatization, what he's advocating. He just, it's an employee stock ownership program rather than state central planning. So, that's my issue, though. But anyway, I'll read your whole question before I give you a full answer. But anyway, as public schools are disappearing, I can't understand why the increasing number of school administrators should be making $300,000 or $400,000 per year, as tenured teachers in Michigan make perhaps 60, 70,000 max before taxes. The administration does less work. Well, if workers can democratically elect and recall their bosses, those bosses should be honored to serve and share the company without making significantly more money. Bosses don't work significantly harder to deserve a lot more money. All jobs in genuinely public schools should be on a rotation so administrators don't lose touch with the classroom. That sounds great. I don't disagree with that. Becoming bossier over time, and teachers don't get burnout. So we can learn more at work, face less corruption, boredom, to be better, happier humans. Well, a lot of what you said there, I don't disagree with. What you said about public schools, about why should the administrators make these amazingly huge salaries when teachers are in the classroom with the kids, which is a lot more stressful than sitting in an office all day. Why should they, they only make $60,000 to $70,000 a year? I think you're absolutely right. The reason, though, is the market, right? Is that administrators are harder to replace. And so they, it's like you're selling a product, right? It's supply and demand. And because, finding someone with the experience to be an administrator is much harder to do, those who do it, they pay them more to hold on to them. It's like supply and demand, and it's wrong, right? Because the work that they do is nowhere near as challenging, and having those jobs be on rotation, I think, is a brilliant idea. I think you're right on that point, Christine. 100% with you. So let's hit the 2 points of disagreement that I have. I don't know. I don't really listen to Richard Wolff's stuff that much, and I actually really respect Richard Wolff. He's a great guy. I've met him many times. He used to come to the RT office when we had a studio in New York. Brilliant man. He actually encouraged me to read Theories of Surplus Value. We had many conversations about Marxist economics, and we have a different approach and a different understanding. So I mean, if you think this is going to turn into me ripping on Professor Wolff, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about the worker cooperatives thing, which he promotes, but that's not the limits of his understanding. He knows about the tendency of the falling rate of profit. He knows about all the stuff that we talk about, overproduction and all that. He just chooses not to emphasize it. But we're going to talk about the worker cooperative thing that he kind of has. I mean, how do I put this? He's made that the focus of his lecturing. And I don't agree with that. And I'll talk about why. And then I'll also talk about the millionaires, billionaires point as well. All right. Those are the 2 points that we can just talk about. And the rest of what you said, I agree with about administrators and everything else, and okay, so the worker cooperative thing. I'm not opposed to worker cooperatives. Worker cooperatives are good, and they're good in the sense that they are more productive. Because if people are getting a share of the profits, they're more motivated to work because they get a share of the profits. Now, and especially for things like a small business, like a coffee shop, right? If all the employees of the coffee shop own a share in it, then they're all going to work to make it as a productive, happier coffee shop as ever, right? And when it comes to like small business kind of things, right? If there's a company that makes like bespoke clothing, right? They make like, clothing on demand, right? And they work together, like crafts, right? Things like that, like small businesses. Cooperatives are great. And the greatest examples of cooperatives are in socialist countries. For example, the biggest worker cooperative in the world is Huawei Technologies, right? It's a cooperative under Chinese law. And Harvard Business Review described Huawei Technologies, the state-run telecommunications manufacturer in China, as a great example of profit-sharing working, right? It's a profit-sharing corporation where every employee gets a set share, a rate of the profits, and that's Huawei Technologies. They've used profit sharing and employee stock ownership as a way to build their company. It's not egalitarian. The CEO of Huawei makes a lot more money, but Lenin Farms in Russia is another great example. Russia's strawberries are grown by a cooperative called Lenin Farms that's owned by members of the Communist Party. And, they have their own school that the kids go to. It's a very, very high quality school that the kids of families that work at Lenin Farms can go to. And, it's a worker cooperative. That's great. Nicaragua, their worker cooperative program, right? Their micro entrepreneurship program has created thousands of cooperatives. 5,000 different cooperatives have been created. But all of these are in the context of not having capitalism, right? And that's the issue here, right? Is that a planned economy, right? The essence, the problem with capitalism is not that it's unfair. The world is unfair. Unfairness exists. I'm older than my younger brother. And so I got to go to fifth grade 3 years ahead of my younger brother. That's not fair. The world is full of injustice, right? The world is full of people having stuff that other people don't have. The world is full of unequal opportunity, all right? And if that was all the problem with capitalism, one could easily look at any socialist country and say there's unfairness there. There is plenty of unfairness and inequality in socialist countries. We're not going around trying to make everyone equal, all right? The problem with capitalism that Marx, if you read the Communist Manifesto, if you read Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, the problem with capitalism is not that employees and employers have an unfair relationship. If that's all you get from the Communist Manifesto, you're missing a huge point. The problem is capitalism is the first system in history where poverty is created by abundance. People can become homeless, not because there's not enough housing, because there's too much housing. People can become hungry, not because there's not enough food, because there's too much food. Capitalism is the only system where poverty is created by abundance, overproduction, the coal miner's riddle. There's a little boy who says to his father, "Why is it so cold?" The father says, "Because we don't have any coal to light the stove." And the little boy says to the father, "Why don't we have any coal to light the stove?" He said, "Because I can't afford it. I don't have any money." He says, "Why don't you have any money?" "Well, I don't have any money because I lost my job. I got laid off at the coal mine. I'm a coal miner and they laid me off at the coal mine." And the boy says, "Why did they lay you off at the coal mine?" He says, "Because there is too much coal." That's capitalism. They're cold in the winter because there is too much coal. Capitalism has the problem of glut, G-L-U-T, glut, where the market becomes saturated with products. And as a result, businesses close down, prices drop, and the economy has a bust, a depression, a recession, because there's too much stuff. And the capitalist government is constantly doing things to deal with this problem. That's why they dump so much money into militarism. That's why they buy, huge amounts of cheese and bury it in a cave in Missouri. We have a completely irrational system where poverty is created by abundance, right? And, self-driving cars should be a great thing, a great technological innovation. But if you introduce self-driving cars, you'd have millions of people unemployed. You'd have riots in the streets of unemployed truck drivers and all of this. Capitalism is the first system in history where economic instability and poverty results from human productivity, and that as technology advances, it leads to more and more economic instability. That's what Marx spent his life writing about: the tendency of the falling rate of profit, the problem of overproduction, which Peter Coffin, innovated, calling it value crisis, not the problem of too much stuff, the problem of people being poor because there is too much stuff, poverty amid plenty, poverty created by abundance. And that's the problem with capitalism. If the problem with capitalism was just that it's unfair, right, that's not the issue. It is unfair, and the employer-employee relationship being unfair is part of what Marx wrote. But it's more than that, right? It's that capitalism creates this problem, this frequent problem of poverty created by abundance. Now, what Marx wrote was that to resolve that, the working class majority has to take control of the means of production and centralize them so you don't have that problem. So no longer do you have capitalists just trying to make profits for themselves and poverty amid plenty and gluts of overproduction. You have a centrally organized society as a whole centralizes the means of production so that with central planning, you can make sure that growth continues indefinitely. The anarchy of production or the chaos of the market is gotten rid of. Now, if you just have employee stock ownership programs, if every company, instead of getting a paycheck, you get a stock dividend, right? If you elect your boss in the factory, you don't get rid of the problem of overproduction, right? You don't, right? I mean, and the profit motive being the basis of the economy is still the problem, right? And that, if those profits are shared, okay, so those profits are shared. Okay, but if the profits are still motivating people to do bad things, right? Who's to say, like, for example, let's say that the military industrial complex, right? Let's say that, Boeing, right? Boeing, the military corporation, was a worker cooperative. Okay. Well, that would be more democratic for the workers at Boeing. They would have a say in how they run things. They'd probably get more money because they're getting a share of the profits. It's not all just going to the top. But would they still not be motivated to have more wars to make more money? Of course they would, because they would get more money from selling more military hardware. Imagine big pharma, Purdue Pharmaceuticals was a worker cooperative. Well, would they not still have a motivation to sell as many drugs as possible? I mean, and on top of that, if you're an individual worker in the cooperative, right, your share gets smaller every time a new employee comes up. If there's 8 employees at the company, you get an 1/8 of the company's profits. But if there's 10, now you're down to getting a 1/10 of the company's profits. So you're going to want to hire as few workers as possible because you want to make sure that your share is as big as possible. So the problem of jobs being eliminated by technological advances, it's still there, right? Because your incentive as an employee owner is you want as few workers as possible so you get as big of a share. All the problems of the anarchy of production are still there. It's just the profits are shared, right? It doesn't overcome the anarchy of production. It doesn't overcome the gluts on the market. It doesn't overcome the profit motive driving companies to do bad things. It doesn't overcome technology replacing jobs and the chaos. It doesn't overcome any of those problems. It just makes the profits shared, and it makes the company a nicer place to work, but it still has all the problems of capitalism. And worker cooperatives would be competing with other worker cooperatives, right? Trying to put other worker cooperatives out of business. I mean, it's still capitalism. It's just capitalism where people get a share of the profits. The profits are more equitably distributed, but it's still profits in command, right? Your worker cooperative is still driving to maximize its profits in the competitiveness and the anarchy of production and the chaos of the market. And it's still trying to maximize its profits. It's still trying to compete with other entities. It's still capitalism. It's just capitalism with things being shared. And in the context of a socialist society, things like Huawei in China work great because the Chinese government plans the economy, and in their planned economy, they build a worker cooperative. Another example, right? Nicaragua, in their socialist economy in Nicaragua, they build worker cooperatives. Micro entrepreneurship program works very well, right? Lenin Farms was built by the Soviet Union as a worker cooperative, and it's great. I've seen Lenin Farms in the Soviet Union, in Russia. It's great. There's many examples of worker cooperatives. They're good, but they don't address the problem of capitalism. My problem is not with worker cooperatives themselves. My problem is there are many videos, right, that you can probably find on YouTube by awful, diabolical human beings that explain that apparently I'm a Nazi, right? First of all, I'm a Nazi, right? Because I advocate a centrally planned economy, when in reality, socialism just means worker cooperatives, duh. And apparently, according to BreadTube, Thought Slime, ContraPoints, all these people. Socialism just means an employee stock ownership program, VOSH. And if you advocate real socialism, you're a Nazi, you're worse than Hitler, and that socialism just means an employee stock ownership program. Well, it doesn't. The employee stock ownership program doesn't address the problem of overproduction. It doesn't address any of these issues. And you still have, jobs being eliminated by technology. You still have gluts on the market as that, your worker cooperative would want to sell as many products as possible. So it would churn out as many products, and then the market would be saturated with products that can't be sold. And then the worker cooperative would have to lay people off when the market implodes. I mean, you're going to still have all the problems of capitalism. It's just, and if you don't have central planning of the economy, you don't eliminate profits in command, right? Mao Zedong talks about capitalism being profits in command. If profits are still in command and you don't have rational state central planning, that's not socialism, and it's not overcoming any of the problems of capitalism. And I've spent my whole life studying Marxism and studying why the Soviet Union was able to lift millions of people out of poverty with their centrally planned economy, with the 5-year plans, why China is the second largest economy in the world, right? They did it by centralizing and organizing the means of production. And the goal of, and I guess we'll then get to the second thing. So the point of socialism is to overcome the irrationality of capitalism and centrally plan production, so you don't have gluts of overproduction. So as technology increases, everyone becomes wealthier. Automation becomes a good thing. We have a society where self-driving cars and automation is a good thing because it means less work for everybody. And human productivity is advancing, and we all become wealthier as a result, and greater abundance increases. And the goal is to eventually have so much wealth that we don't even need a government, that so much wealth that there's equality because there's enough for everybody. Marx made very clear, if you read Critique of the Goethe Program, we don't want to force equality. It's not about, going around with a powerful government and saying, you make everybody equal. It's that we want to rationally organize the means of production so that there's so much wealth that exists and technology has advanced so much that so little human labor power is necessary, that everyone lives in so much abundance that we don't need a government, and that people can just do what they feel like doing, from each according to his own ability, to each according to his needs. And we live in a post-scarcity world where there is universal luxury. Took the words, great way of putting it, right? So why, when you say billionaires and millionaires shouldn't exist, I take issue with that because I want universal luxury. I want everyone to be a millionaire and a billionaire. I want a world with so much wealth and so much abundance that everyone lives far better than millionaires and billionaires live in our time, right? The problem is not wealth. That's not the problem. The problem is an irrational economic system where people get rich by making other people poor. That's the problem. It's wealth gained at the expense of others. It's a system where poverty is created by abundance and the economy is not rational, and people make profits by getting other people hooked on opioids or getting us into wars or impoverishing people or paying people poverty wages. That's the problem. The problem is not wealth. We are not against wealth. We are not against wealth. And the goal is to rationally organize and centrally plan the economy, have society take control of the economy and rationally organize it. So there's so much wealth and technology keeps advancing and there's just so much wealth that we all live in absolute splendor. That's what it's about. And the worker cooperative thing completely forgets any of that. Worker cooperatives don't talk about the problem that I have with the worker cooperative narrative. It forgets all of this. Read Critique of the Goethe Program, read Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific. Marxism is an understanding of the irrationality of capitalism, the need for society as a whole to rationally organize the means of production so we can create universal abundance and build a post-scarcity technological utopia where everyone lives in splendor. That's Marxism. Worker cooperatives, the worker cooperative crap, reduces Marxism to some people own the pencil factory, some people work in the pencil factory. That's no fair. And so we'll start a cooperative pencil factory. And, and in this cooperative pencil factory, they share the profits. The end. No, that's not Marxism. I'm sorry, that's not Marxism. Go read the Communist Manifesto, where it talks about poverty amid plenty. Go read Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific. Go read Critique of the Goethe Program. Marxism is not, some people work in the pencil factory, some people own the pencil factory. No fair, let's share the profits. That is not what it is. And the people who say that's what it is are obnoxious people. For example, Jacobin Magazine, the social imperialists at Jacobin Magazine, the crypto-Zionists at Jacobin Magazine, who defame Jerry Healy, who are funded, Jacobin Magazine is funded by Israel, by the way. Ben Norton actually revealed that. It's funded by the Jewish Communal Fund, an Israeli, foundation. The Jewish Communal Fund pays for Jacobin, this propaganda magazine. And many times Jacobin has debated against the Cato Institute or libertarians. And every time it is cringe as hell, because the libertarians get up there and they give you your standard neoliberal, if we just privatize everything, capitalism is amazing, your standard neoliberal response. And the response of Jacobin Magazine is, we don't want state socialism, we just want worker cooperatives. And it's not helpful. The Jacobin, the Cato, the libertarians get up there. Communism failed everywhere it's ever been tried and killed a gamillion people. They don't debunk that. They agree with that. They're Trotskyites. They agree with that. Capitalism produces endless wealth for everybody, and if you just privatize everything, it works. They don't debunk that. They agree with that. And they just get up there. We want to voluntarily create cooperatives. That's not a response to any of this libertarian poison. They're not debunking any of the libertarian poison. Libertarianism, libertarian economics is very, very wrong on many, many levels. And it says that if we just get rid of all the regulation, capitalism is just magical. And, it doesn't acknowledge the problems of capitalism. It buys into the lies we've been told about the Soviet Union and all the countries. And I've seen many times Jacobin debate libertarians. They just get up and they just, oh, yeah. And in fact, the worker cooperative stuff doesn't even make any demands on the state, right? I mean, right now, the state, the government of the United States is allowing the country to rot. We need to demand a government of action that paves the roads and build highways. But, many times I've seen these worker cooperative people say, oh, we don't want the government to do anything. Socialism has nothing to do with the government. We just want to get funding and start our own little cooperative business to model egalitarian relations between employers and employees. They're not even making any demands on the state. They're not demanding that the government stop funding these wars. They're not demanding that the government fund our communities and invest in neighborhoods and set up a national bank or nationalize natural resources. No, they just want to set up some model worker cooperative. It's not socialism, right? The worker cooperative thing has nothing to do. I mean, again, worker cooperatives are fine, but they work best in the context of a socialist planned economy. And the worker cooperative ideology that has been invented, this fake internet bread tube socialism, it's not socialism. I mean, it's not Marxism in any conceivable way, right? And so I think I've made the point. But I've spent my life studying this stuff. And I mean, what these people believe, the anarcho-communists or the worker cooperative people, what they believe is not Marxist economics. It is just a liberal, hippy-dippy nonsense. I mean, that's all it is. It's just bullshit. And I've spent my life studying this, the problem of overproduction, the tendency of the falling rate of profit, 5-year economic plans that turned the Soviet Union into a superpower, made China the second largest economy in the world. And it just eliminates all of that. And, oh no, socialism's got nothing to do with the government. Let's start a pencil factory and we'll all share the profits. That's not Marxist economics. That's my issue. And that's also my issue with the phrase abolish billionaires or abolish millionaires. No, I want a society where everyone can be a millionaire. I want a society where everyone can be a billionaire. The problem isn't, millionaire and billionaire is just a measurement of wealth. We're all millionaires or billionaires compared to people who lived 100 years ago. You know that, right? Back in the Middle Ages, to have a mirror, right? Only kings and queens had mirrors in their homes. To have a piece of glass that was shiny, you could see your reflection in, you were the richest of the rich. So was the slogan, should we have said abolish mirrors? No, we should fight for a world where everyone can have a mirror. I want a rationally organized economy where society controls the economy. No one gets rich by making other people poor, but rather society controls the economy to make sure there's constant expansion of wealth, and everyone can live far richer than millionaires and billionaires live in our time. We're not against wealth. We are not against wealth. We are against poverty. We are against exploitation, but we are not against wealth. And if you're against wealth, that is going to lead you to a scarcity mindset. When you're against wealth, that's not healthy psychologically. You're against wealth, then you're going to start thinking that somebody has and they have because I don't have. And that's going to lead to resentment, which is a negative mindset. And that's going to lead to jealousy. And it's going to lead to the assumption that we can't have growth, right? If the pie can only be this big, the only way your slice can get any bigger is by cutting into someone else's slice. And that's the recipe for genocide. That's the recipe for all the bad things in the world flow. A lot of the bad things in this world flow from the belief that the pie is only this big. And so if I'm going to get a bigger slice, I've got to cut into somebody else's. And you don't, right? The pie is unlimited. And with a rationally organized economy, wealth can just grow and grow and technology can expand. That is my critique of the worker cooperative stuff. That is my critique. And I hope that I didn't get too emotional there. But this is the economics I've spent my life studying. If you want to learn more, I recommend you read this book, Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. I go into great detail about all of this, right? And I quote from various Marxist scholars and all of this, but that's the issue, right? And this is, I have spent a long time studying the Marxist economic theories, and I see people explain that, oh, well, Marx just said worker cooperatives. No, he didn't. All right. That's probably, there you go. All right, cool. Next question. All right. And this is another long one, and it's a good one. It's actually a very good question. Mike sent it in, and I appreciate it, Mike, and I'm going to read your question. Maduro talked about Rubio's war. Putin and Russia indicate that Trump wants peace, but the U.S. power structure won't allow it. Iran talks about Trump being dragged into Netanyahu's war. Don't these indicate that the imperialists of the deep state are dragging Trump into conflicts, not Israel per se? Don't Israeli interests play a larger role in the deep state? You said on Press TV that the recent attack wasn't just about the longstanding rivalry with Iran, that it was due to Israel's interests. But don't we have to consider the worsening economic situation brought by overproduction? The economy has been on the verge of collapse for years while BRICS continues to grow in strength. Why wouldn't that take the imperialist hands out to act brashly? Take out Iran would only remove a large oil competitor, but it would be a key step in weakening and surrounding Russia and China. U.S. think tanks have planned this openly. I saw a member of the Rockefeller family congratulate Trump after kidnapping Maduro. Wouldn't the New England establishment be similarly happy about Trump's attack on Iran? Would the U.S. imperialists, the deep state, etc., allow a war on Iran if it wasn't truly in their interest? Aren't there any mechanisms that they can use to influence or block to control Trump in the same way they blocked the Ukraine war from ending? If Israel is in control, wouldn't they have caused the Ukraine war to end already so the U.S. could divert more resources to Israel? Does blaming Israel for this war risk creating a scapegoat that lets U.S. imperialism off the hook? How should we weigh all of these factors when trying to understand the true cause of the attack? Well, you're right. I mean, you're onto a lot there, Mike. And here's the thing, right? The difference between the Eastern establishment and the ultra-rich and the military-industrial complex has generally been, throughout the Cold War, the military-industrial complex wants big wars to make lots of money, and they don't really care about the results, and they just want lots of big wars to make lots of money. Whereas the Eastern establishment is thinking more long-term in the interests of U.S. imperialism, and that they're planning out a strategy that is more expensive and takes longer, but will ultimately secure the rule of Wall Street for a longer time. And if you read the Yankee and the Cowboy War, that's really what it is. And like, for example, with Iran, and I've written articles about this, right? The Obama strategy for Iran, we now know was this, that he wanted to make the Iran nuclear deal, get American investment into Iran, and boost the moderate wing of Iranian politics, the grandson of Khomeini, who's a reformist, not Khamenei, but Khomeini, right? People like Rouhani, the previous administration, boost the reformist wing of Iranian politics, get American corporations and businesses in there, let the generation that led the Islamic Revolution and lived through it die off. It's mostly younger people. Get those younger people looking at Facebook and Twitter and, and get them westernized and gradually have the Islamic Republic just kind of come apart from within, like a color revolution. And that's a long-term strategy, right? And it's not going to make a lot of money for the military-industrial complex. And it's going to take a long time. And, that's what they were able to do in Libya, right? Is that they made a deal with Libya. They lifted sanctions on Libya. They sunk American businesses in there. They got the younger rich kids of Libya looking at Facebook and Twitter, and they created a civil war, and they eventually destroyed Libya. It took a long time. And Iran, it would be a similar thing. It would take a long time. They'd have to get Americans in there. They'd have to wait for the generation to change. They'd have to boot. It's kind of like how they worked against the Soviet Union, right? I've said many times, the military-industrial complex did not bring down the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was brought down by the CIA, that they waited. There was a generation that hadn't, been around for World War II. Gorbachev was from the new generation that hadn't remembered the revolution. And they ideologically penetrated it, and they found the reformist, the de-Stalinization, the reformist wing of the Soviet Communist Party, and they funded their magazines and their newspapers, and they backed them, and they gradually brought to power a wing of Soviet communist leadership that basically didn't believe in communism, and they basically they moved to liquidate things, and they pulled off a color revolution. They brought down the Soviet Union. That is a long-term strategy, right? And if you just threaten a country with military force, or you just bomb them, you're not gonna win. And this is the kind of thing that the Eastern establishment thinks about, and they come up with long-term strategies that play out in imperialism's interest. Whereas the military-industrial complex just wants to make money. They don't care, right? They're not concerned about the results. They just want to make money. What Trump is doing right now, many people are looking at this and saying, and you're right in the sense that, Iran is a major barrier to U.S. domination. Iran has lots of oil that especially China needs to import. Iran is a close ally of Russia and China. It's a main center of resistance. And the Eastern establishment think tanks have been plotting to bring down Iran for a long time. But they generally have been thinking, how do we do this slowly and gradually through getting in there, making a deal with Iran, etc. Whereas Netanyahu needs Iran as a threat, right? Netanyahu almost wants there to be Iran to exist because it's a threat. I don't think Netanyahu wants to destroy Iran. Netanyahu wants Iran as a boogeyman, and he wants chaos throughout the region so that Israel can be dominant. And that was the Oded Yunan plan. Sunni-Shia war, chaos, right? Syria is in chaos. Iraq is in chaos. Afghanistan was in chaos for 20 years. They just want chaos throughout the region so Israel can be dominant and there's not solid resistance to Israel, right? But he needs there to be a threat, and he's not thinking long-term about how do we gradually, collapse Iran and overturn the revolution. He's just thinking, I need to get reelected. I need Iran to be the enemy, the boogeyman. I need there to be chaos throughout the region so there's no solid resistance that can back the Palestinians that can oppose us. And so right now, the military-industrial complex is having a field day bombing the shit out of Iran, number one. Number two, there's chaos throughout the region, right, which is good for Israel. Iran is being weakened, I guess, and this isn't like some gradual strategy to gradually just overturn the Islamic Revolution. And in fact, if anything, the moderates in Iran are done. I mean, the hardliners, whatever, but it may be that they reduce Iran to civil war. They've got the Kurds attacking Iran now. They're bombing the place up. They're going to create chaos, but you're going to get a lot more hardliners and fanatical Islamic Shia fighters out of this, right? The moderate wing of the Islamic Republic is done, right? They're all hardliners now, right? At this point, I mean, the moderates are completely done. And you're going to have a lot of fanatical Shia fighters and stuff. But at the same time, you'll get chaos. I mean, there's differing agendas, right? The Eastern establishment is thinking gradual, long-term strategies that are not very dramatic, whereas the military-industrial complex wants to make money, and Netanyahu has certain political needs that he needs, right? At the end of the day, yeah, both of them want to destroy Iran at the end of the day, right? And that's true. They do. There seemed to be a wing of the Trump camp with Tulsi, with Tucker, people like that that thought we could make money trading with the BRICS countries and all of that, but they've been overruled. And you're right in the sense that, yeah, those folks would never, yeah, the deep state, is not going to allow those folks to, they were useful on the campaign trail. They gave voice to what a lot of Americans believe and a lot of Americans would vote for, but they're not going to let them run policy, right? And that Trump is in there, and he's basically on board with their foreign policy. He just is pandering really hard to the military-industrial complex wing and to Netanyahu. And he is, he doesn't really care about, he's not interested in the short term or the long-term strategies of, gradually expanding U.S. influence in the region, right? And so you're right in the sense that that it's not that Trump is working against the interests of American imperialism. He's working against the strategic wing of American imperialism and how they would like to gradually do things. And he's working much more in the interests of the forces that want to make a lot of money. But at the end of the day, they both have the same target. They both hate Iran. Iran is, an opponent, right? This is more the lower levels of capital in the military-industrial complex, but they're still they're still trying to carry out the same goal, which is overturn the Islamic Republic, weaken Iran. But they're carrying it out in a way that is sloppier, I guess, and has a lot more unpredictable consequences and will create a lot of chaos. Whereas the strategies that the Eastern establishment would be putting forward would be a lot more careful and slow working, and Trump is carrying it out in a way that could have a lot more unforeseen consequences, and that doesn't seem to be a concern. I hope that makes sense. But you're right. You're right in the sense that, if we just say it's just Israel, look, I think there's a lot of people in Israel that don't agree with this, right? I think Netanyahu, when Netanyahu came to the UN and spoke against the Iran nuclear deal, let's remember there were a bunch of Israeli generals who wrote Netanyahu a letter and told him not to do that, right? And that there were a lot of Israelis who supported the Iran nuclear deal, seeing it as being part of an overall strategy. Netanyahu represents a particular faction in Israeli politics. He's like what you might call a settler populist, in that, that his voters tend to be more recent immigrants to Israel from Eastern Europe that are more radical. And Netanyahu, he's not a team player with imperialism. He's interested in the short-term gain for his particular wing of Israeli politics. And Trump seems to be interested in short-term gain for the military-industrial complex. And there's a convergence of interests there. And they're not really concerned with the long term. In the long term, yeah, if chaos spreads throughout the region, that's good for Israel. Their enemies are more divided. There's more of a case that you need, that they need the military and stuff because, look, there's chaos outside. We need to build up our defenses. Netanyahu would gain, from utter chaos throughout the region. And I mean, they don't have to be concerned about the long-term consequences, and they're going to make lots of money from weapons, et cetera. Whereas there is kind of an overall agenda to have American corporations dominate the globe, and all the dissident factions and all the groups that, have resisted them gradually lose influence and be replaced by liberal thinking and all of that. And that's, the Eastern establishment would like that, but there's not as much money in that, and it costs money, and it takes a really long time. So there you go. I hope that answered your question, Mike. I know it's kind of a long, drawn-out answer I gave you there, but I hope it was helpful. But you're right. And also, I mean, at the end of the day, you just can't vote against imperialism. I mean, at the end of the day, what American imperialism wants is what it gets, and that's something we have to remember. And that's why when we intervene in elections, we're not trying to boost an anti-imperialist candidate. We're trying to boost an anti-imperialist message. The only way anti-imperialism will win is if there's a mass movement. And there isn't a mass movement right now. It could be 99% of American people that are against this war. It'd still be happening because there's no way of asserting themselves, right? All right. At the end of the day, the anti-war majority has no movement through which to express its will, right? The the Answer Coalition that is running the protests represents a fringe of the woke people, right? And the anti-war majority is largely, it's more conservatives than liberals, right? You know, I guess a lot of the liberals are against it because Trump's doing it, so that helps. But you know, but largely that we don't have a movement through which the bulk of the population that is opposed to these wars and is seeing its living standards go down can express itself. And so as a result, they don't have the ability to really change things. So, you know, you can't just vote out imperialism. Okay. Next question. Someone bought a coffee. Did Iran really use chemical weapons and child soldiers in the Iraq-Iran war? Well, in the subject of youth, have youth in anti-imperialist countries been, I don't want to, ew, how is that? What? This is a strange question. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm going to answer this question. You used language in here I'm not going to repeat. But all right. So did Iran use chemical weapons and child soldiers in the Iraq-Iran war? My understanding is Iran was a victim of chemical weapons during the Iraq-Iran war, right? Chemical weapons from the United States were used on them by Iraq, number one. Child soldiers, I understand that did go on to some degree or other. You know, that, yeah, when I was in Iran, there were a lot of images of martyrs that were like teenage boys who had, there's a teenage boy in Iran who's very famous for, like, he saw Iraqi tanks coming. He woke up in the middle of the night and he strapped explosives to himself and threw himself in front of the tanks. And, there are teenage boys fighting in the Iraq-Iran war is something that did happen, is my understanding. So that counts as child soldiers, right? Child soldiers is anyone under the age of 18, generally. That's my understanding, right? So that one did happen, right? But chemical weapons, that was the other side. Iraq did that to them, and it was, chemical weapons that had been provided to them by the United States. They were being supported by the United States at the time they did those chemical attacks. As far as the young people in socialist countries, this is a part of the propaganda we get. All these young people are brainwashed. They're all brainwashed. I actually talk about this in the Houthi book. There's a section of the Houthi book where I talk about the youth programs of the Houthis. Go and read the Houthi book. I talk about this. They're all supposedly brainwashed. Most American young people cannot find their own country on a map. National Geographic does studies. American young people, they can't find Iran on a map. They can't find North Korea on a map. They can't even find America on a map. But they're free thinking. They're free thinking because they can look at their phone all day. But these young people in Iran, because they have the ideology of the Islamic Revolution, because they are taught that they're on a mission to promote the Islamic way of being and promote not capitalism but Islam and the ideals of the Islamic Revolution. Because of that, we're taught, well, they're all brainwashed. Well, they can all find their country on a map, right? Ideology is kind of a basic human need. You need to know if you're driving down the road, you need to know where you're going. You need to know where you came from. You need to know how you're getting there. And, that's what ideology is. It tells you where you came from, where you're going, how you're getting there. That's what ideology is, right? It gives you the ability to point to the map and say, this is where I am. And imagine you were driving down the road and you didn't know where you were going and you didn't know where you came from. You would stop the car because you wouldn't know. And that's what millions of young people in America are doing. They're stopping the car. They're getting on drugs. They're committing suicide. They're going, what is my life about? Because they don't know where they are. And oh, well, they're not being brainwashed, Caleb. They're free to think for themselves. No, they're not. Right? They're not being given a purpose in life. Human beings need ideology. Every society in history has invented ideology, right? Ideology is important. And just because people are being given ideology doesn't mean they're being brainwashed, right? So I don't know. Ideology is good. And we're liberalism, the liberal postmodern thinking that opposes all ideology, that celebrates the individual, and deconstruction, postmodernism, is brain cancer, and it's messing people up. And it's like, yeah, we're taught, oh, all these young people, they're brainwashed and all that. Well, no, they're being given ideology. And ideology is something you need. You need ideology, right? Generally, you need ideology, right? And people without ideology are quite miserable and unhappy. So, that's one thing. So there you go. All right. Okay, so that was that question. All right. Now, Swine Class said, How soon will the American masses wake up and overthrow the exploiters? Well, here's the thing. Again, revolutions don't just fall from the sky, right? In order to have a revolution, you generally need three things. And this is, Lenin. He says that in order to have a revolution, you have to have a serious crisis within society, right? A crisis so bad that even the ruling class are upset and fighting among themselves. Secondly, you need mass rebellions among the people. And third, you need a revolutionary organization capable of transforming those mass rebellions into a struggle for the seizure of power. We have the first one. And kind of the second, but not really, right? We have some, controlled releases. We have some Bonapartist manipulations and all that. But we don't have real rebellions among the masses of the people. The conditions have not gotten to the point that the people are actually rebelling. They're getting more radical in their views. They're getting mad at the other side, red team versus blue team, which is a way of managing dissent. But we don't really have mass rebellions among the people. We have sections of the population being manipulated against each other. We have rising radicalism and anger among the population, but we don't really have rebellions, right? There's not, there's not rebellions among the people. And we definitely don't have a revolutionary organization capable of transforming that into anything, right? And those are the three ingredients you need to have a revolution. And so, if you just, a lot of people think it's only number two, right? You just need mass rebellions among the people. Well, no, rebellions that don't lead anywhere, that don't, that are just kind of people blowing off steam can actually lead to things being made worse, right? And if conditions get bad, a lot of people think, oh, all you need to have a revolution is bad conditions. Well, no, actually, if conditions just get worse and no one does anything about it, that just leads to people being demoralized. Generally, you need conditions to be bad. You need the masses of people to be in revolt against those conditions, asserting their own needs, etc. And then you need a revolutionary organization, that is capable of saying to the people that are already in revolt and giving them a line of march toward a new society. And that's how revolutions are done, right? That's the science of revolution that I just laid out there. All very, very good questions tonight. We got some really, really deep stuff tonight, and that's good. That's good. Now, there's a couple Rumble rants that have come in. I will say, there's somebody in the chat who's just excessively rude. And I just, they sent me messages that were insulting and rude, and they, and told me not to read them out loud on the air as Buy Me a Coffee. So I'm not going to read them. And then they were in the chat saying rude stuff, and I just and now they're mad that I muted them. I just muted them for tonight. But you got to treat me with respect. I'm sorry. And if you send me the kind of messages this person sent me, I have really no interest in talking to this person whatsoever, and on top of that, the way the person was talking in the chat in Rumble tonight, I just muted them. I don't want to hear it, and I really just don't appreciate people being rude. I just, and that's the other thing is every time I get all these people like, oh, you won't tolerate anyone who disagrees with me. Yes, I will. There's people disagreeing with me all over the chat. I'm not going to tolerate disrespect, right? I'm not going to tolerate people being rude, right? And it's just, this is my channel, right? My YouTube channel. And if you're going to come on here and you're going to insult me, you're going to make sexual, inappropriate, childish comments, you're done, right? That's simple. Boom, right? People can disagree, people can argue, and, but there are things people do in the chat that annoy me that I often will just tolerate, right? For example, there's a lot of times people are in the chat not listening to anything I'm saying, and they're arguing about something, and they're trying to get all the other people in the chat to argue about something completely unrelated to what I'm talking about. I generally find that annoying, right? It's like we're on here talking about stuff, right? We're on here talking about something and you're in the chat, arguing with somebody about the Pokemon movie and, and having a fiery argument with somebody about the Pokemon movie. I'm not talking about the Pokemon movie and you're in there, cussing, and the 5 or 6 chat members are cussing each other out about the Pokemon movie. It's I don't like that, but I allow that to go on because you're not being rude. You're not disrespecting me. You know what I mean? But yeah, when people start leaving comments in the chat that are, and especially about sensitive issues. And, I really don't appreciate that. I really don't. And, and it's just like, maybe there are people who, I do realize one thing, and this is just a reality. And I mean, this is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing about the internet. There's a lot of people who, maybe due to life circumstances, some kind of disability, some kind of lack of social skills, or just they live in living conditions that don't allow them to go outside, that they don't. And there's a lot of people that the internet gives them the ability to interact with others in a way that they normally wouldn't have. And that's a good thing. That's a very, very good thing. Actually, I'm glad the internet exists, right? There's probably people watching me right now that if it wasn't for the internet, they would never hear anyone saying anything like this. And they would never get to connect with you all or with me the way that we all are connecting right now. So the internet is a really good thing. However, a lot of the people who are online, they talk about being chronically online, which, that's mean. Some people can't help it, right? There are people who can't go out much because they're disabled. There are people that have genuine like social disabilities, whether they're on the spectrum, autistically or something. And so I don't want to be mean to people. But unfortunately, I have noticed there are a lot of people that are online that they don't know how to not be rude, right? And they don't understand that, like, and then that like I get a lot of childish messages. Oh my God, Caleb, you can't tolerate anyone disagreeing with you. All I did was disagree with you. And it's like, no, you didn't just disagree with me. You made a very nasty comment about me, or you insulted somebody in the chat. You called somebody stupid. You gotta just, you gotta be polite, right? And that, it's unfortunate, but I can, and I block people on Twitter a lot, and I've seen people get mad about it, right? Oh, how dare you block me? Well, did you insult me or didn't you? Right? If you call me some nasty name, I'm going to block you. It's not my, I don't get it. But anyway, people can be a little sensitive, but somebody was in the chat tonight talking shit, and they had sent me a couple buy me a coffees, actually, which I appreciate when people do that. But they said, don't read this out loud. And they said a bunch of really insulting, childish things that I really didn't appreciate. And they were like weird. They didn't even make any sense. And no, I'm not interested in that. And, and so then they're in the chat tonight saying a bunch of stuff. No, we're done. You know what I mean? And they can come back tomorrow night on Rumble if they want, but I just don't want to listen to you for the rest of the night. I really don't, and when you're, maybe this person is genuinely disabled. They just don't understand how they come across, but I don't have to tolerate that, right? This is my channel. And again, I'm not on here to get rich. I'm not on here like just begging people for views, I'm on here to make a movement. I'm trying to create a movement. And I don't need people that are going to bring negative energy into the space. I just don't need that, right? If you're going to be negative, I don't need you in my space, right? I just don't, right? So there you go, right? APEC put a Code Pick member in a neck brace in a similar event. Ray McGovern, when he turned his back on Hillary too. Yeah, these people can be very violent. He's reacting. This is Hempcar in the Rumble, reacting to the way this Marine was treated on Capitol Hill today. Awful, right? And they can be very, very violent when people dare disagree with them. And that's one thing. People with very, very mainstream views, they have this very childish reaction, like, oh my God, somebody disagreed with me. How dare they? And it's, they just can't take it. In this case, this guy was actually disrupting a proceeding. So that's a little bit different. Disrupting a proceeding is not the same as, it's not like this guy was just standing there disagreeing. There was a proceeding going on, but why would a member of Congress jump in? Like, that was really irresponsible on that member of Congress's part. Every so often you hear stories like that about elected officials back in the day that hated the Vietnam War protesters. And so when the police were going to go beat up protesters, they would show up, members of city council that wanted to beat up protesters themselves or something. And that's not healthy. That's really unhealthy, right? And that this member of the U.S. Senate, who the police were dragging out, the Capitol Police were dragging out a protester, and he decided to go in and rough up the protester himself, that guy is not a healthy person. He's not a good guy, right? Because first of all, it's not a fair fight. If somebody's fighting 4 cops and then you jump in, you can't claim that's a fair fight. It's 5-on-1, right? But it's like what is he doing? Like he wants to get a punch in there too, so he can feel like a big guy or something. That's really messed up. And the guy, I mean, it's just irresponsible, right? If I was that Marine, I would sue that member of Congress, right? You could say the Capitol Police were just doing their job, but this U.S. Senator jumped into the fight for no reason, and it looks like this guy was injured. So I think he's got a strong case, not just against the Capitol Police, but against that U.S. Senator, right? That U.S. Senator had no business jumping into that confrontation. None, right? I mean, the Capitol Police, that's one of the bad things about being a police officer. They have to put their hands on people. That's one thing that people that will defend police and police brutality cases will say, well, what are they supposed to do, right? They just let the guy go. That's true, right? Cops' job is to manhandle people, to secure people. Really unpleasant job, but they kind of have to do it, right? So if the police, if they're, someone's being arrested and they say, well, actually, no, and they try to run away, the cops have to drag him and put him in handcuffs. And that's when policing gets to be an ugly job. And that's why a lot of people don't want to be police officers, So, the Capitol Police, they had to, this guy was disrupting the proceeding. Their job was to arrest him, to take him out of there, or at least remove him from the room. But the senator didn't have to do that. There was no reason. He should have sat in his chair and let the Capitol Police handle it. But he didn't, right? He wanted to he wanted to feel like a big man or something. He wanted to be that was messed up, right? That was completely unhealthy. And that guy shouldn't be in Congress. There's no, a U.S. senator has so little self-control that a protester is making some noise and the police are already, 4 cops are on the guy and he still has to walk over there and get his punch in too or something. That gets really irresponsible, really, really irresponsible. Lack of self-control, unhealthy sadistic impulse. That guy, I don't think he's fit for public office, right? I just, if you have that little self-control, that's my opinion. That is my opinion. All right. Spanish politician Montero, war on Iran solely for oil and money and U.S. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. It's about dominating the international oil markets, beating down a center of resistance to American imperialism, the Islamic Republic. That's what it's about. That is what it's all about. But listen, folks, we are almost at 3 hours and I am at the end of my rope. I am very tired, but we had a great conversation tonight. I'm glad to be back. I'm not glad with the situation in the world, but we're going to see how it develops. But we have to build a movement, and we have to build a movement. There's really no alternative. We've got to build a movement. So join the Center for Political Innovation. We're building that movement. And tonight, I just explained to everybody, I explained our new outreach campaign that we're going to do, which is going to be very exciting. And yeah, we have got there's really nothing we can do except build a mass movement. And there's nothing that's going to change this except build a mass movement. So join the Center for Political Innovation. We got to build an anti-imperialist base, an axis of resistance within America. That's what is urgently needed. There is nothing else, right? We need to build the anti-monopoly coalition. We need to demand a government of action that'll fight for working families. So on that note, I'm saying good night for now. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.